Part 62. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 628. The formation in the room was crumbling under the bombardment of the two men, as if it was about to collapse at any time. The aura of heaven behind Wei Mengru emits a deep, dark light. Under the light, her figure is illuminated to be particularly sacred and mysterious, full of dangerous aura. Even Yao Meng felt that it was a bit tricky. She knew that the original witch's past identity was not simple, but she did not expect that the original witch who had not obtained a seat in the heaven would be so difficult to deal with. Boom! There seemed to be an invisible hand in the black mist that struck Yao Meng, colliding with the pure world green lotus. Click! Finally, at a certain moment, the formation in the room was completely shattered. Almost at that moment, the female bodhisattva who was meditating in a Zen room suddenly opened her eyes. It was only then that she realized that a battle had just occurred in Muzian's room. Miaoi Bodhisattva stepped out of the Zen room, and Muzian's voice came from outside the room. "Why did you come out so quickly? I thought you would observe it again." Bodhisattva Miaoi looked at Muzian speechlessly. "This is Nalanda Temple." "Yes, this is an iconic place in the western region, and as a result, the two great masters actually fought in the sky of Nalanda. They are obviously still restrained now, but if they are really hit on the head soon." Miaoi Bodhisattva thought of this, and his eyes quickly fell on the dark figure fighting King Di again, with some doubts in his eyes. Color. Being able to fight against the Qing Emperor, and not fighting locally, means that the opponent should also be in the Ascension realm. But there should be only 3 people in the current Ascension realm. Who is this person? "Don't worry, they won't cause much damage," Muzian reassured. Yao Meng and the evil witch obviously restrained themselves because they were afraid that it would affect Muzian below. As long as he is here, Nalanda will not be much destroyed in the aftermath. Donor Mu, this seems to be different from what was promised at the beginning. Bodhisattva Miaoi clasped his hands together and stared at Muzian quietly with cold eyes. There was obviously a bit more evil in that tone. Muzian looked helpless. "I didn't ask them to fight here, but although Nalanduo Temple will not be destroyed if this continues, I am afraid that the top of Nalanduo Mountain cannot be saved." Bodhisattva Miaoi glanced at Muzian calmly, her eyelids twitching slightly. "It seems that the Bodhisattva is not completely without desires and demands." Muzian coughed lightly and continued, "but things are not completely without improvement. Donor Shepherd, you might as well say it directly if you have something to say," the female Bodhisattva said coldly. Muzian showed a mysterious smile, came to her side, and said something softly. Boom! Between the sky and the earth, a thunderbolt as bright as daylight flashed past. Under the sky there were dense clouds, and the white sun seemed to fall. It appeared directly behind the evil witch, as if it had become her possessions, and the woman the figure shrouded in black mist made it even more bizarre. Amidst the rolling thunder, the evil witch in front of the sun slowly raised her head. Her long hair was disheveled, her skin was white, and her face in the black mist had an unreal feeling. In the black fog, it seems that some mysterious substance can be seen. It is unknown where it comes from, but this mysterious substance is affecting the entire space. Yao Meng's exquisite jade feet stepped on the void. Her face was soft, but the green lotus behind her was blooming with charming brilliance, as if the space was torn open, and the stars filling the space could be seen. I remember that there was such a mysterious substance in the second arc in the Blue Clan's ancestral land. It involves time, right? She stared at the mysterious substance in the black mist and suddenly said softly. "You have obviously been a pilgrimage temple for thousands of years, but you really know a lot of things." The evil witch showed a smile. "Young master told you this." The clouds were rolling under her feet. She didn't even need to use her spiritual energy to float naturally under the sky, her skirt swaying, outlining her slender figure. Before Yao Meng could speak, the evil witch said calmly, "But just let the young master say it. Anyway, you just relied on your beauty and despicable body to seduce him a few times, so it's nothing special. After all, you are just a little lucky, and you happen to be able to be reborn with the help of his natural furnace." The words were full of disdain, coupled with her superior posture standing high in the sky at this moment, as if she was the winner at this moment, looking down on Yao Meng with a superior posture. Yao Meng didn't care, but asked, "What exactly is time matter?" The evil witch obviously had no intention of answering, and said with a smile, "I thought you knew everything. It seems that your understanding of the second arc, and even time and matter, is limited to this." When she spoke, in the diffuse black fog, time and matter were affecting the entire space all the time. Just at the first glance, there was a sense of suffocating pressure. I thought that such ridicule would change Yao Meng's mentality. Unexpectedly, facing the evil witch's merciless sarcasm, the beautiful fairy showed a faint smile on her face. "You are right. If it weren't for your young master, I would probably have fallen by now, and I wouldn't be what I am today." The evil witch showed a sneer and was about to speak. At this moment, Yao Meng's voice changed, and she smiled slightly and said, "In the final analysis, your young master told me about time and material things before when we were in bed." The evil witch's smile faltered. King Di's words seemed to be acknowledging that he was not as good as the evil witch, but the other meaning behind his words was, "I don't know as many things as you, but your young master will tell me everything." Dog. Even in Museon's fish pond, only Qing Emperor is qualified to say this. After all, Qing Emperor is the one who has cultivated the most with him, at least so far. I hope you can still be as sharp-tongued as you are now when you are bound by the immortal devouring chain. The evil witch came to her senses quickly, and the black mist behind her suddenly erupted, and the violent spiritual energy raged wantonly, completely depriving all elements and spiritual energy in the entire space almost instantly. There seemed to be countless dark cracks in the sky, and bottomless mysterious substances overflowed from those cracks. "Is this time matter?" Yao Meng raised his head and stared at the mysterious substance floating in the black mist, and couldn't help but whisper to himself in his heart. The time substance that can affect the flow of time is completely controlled by the original witch. It is no wonder that she is so confident. They are both feathered, but the original witch's combat power is indeed unfathomable. However, just as the black mist overflowed from the sky, I suddenly heard a cold voice from the ground, "This is my holy land in the western regions. If you two have anything to do with each other, please leave Nailan Duo fight again." The evil witch just glanced at the cold female bodhisattva with contempt. "Can a bodhisattva from the western region threaten me? It's better to let the Buddha come out." The female bodhisattva stepped on the lotus with her beautiful feet. Her eyes flashed, "Have you ever seen the Buddha? A long time ago, he personally went to the borderless land to save all sentient beings, but he left after discovering that the will of heaven was sleeping there," the evil witch said with a smile. "The land of no one is the place where the will of heaven sleeps, and it is also the battlefield of the monks. There are countless dead souls there who cannot reincarnate. Even the Hades in the north are unwilling to set foot there, for fear of being contaminated by the unknown, and for fear of awakening the sleeping souls. The will of heaven. It's normal for a junior like you not to know about this kind of thing." The evil witch's eyes quickly fell on the female bodhisattva, and she said with a smile, "You just said you wanted me to leave this broken temple, so if I don't plan to leave, what can you do?" Miao Bodhisattva clasped his hands together and said calmly, "Then I can only feel sorry for the donor." Behind Miao Bodhisattva, Museon, who was bound by a magic blessed chain, appeared silently beside the female bodhisattva. He seemed to be in a coma and his face was pale. The evil witch's eyes suddenly fell on the female bodhisattva, "Threatening me with hostages. If this practice in the western regions spreads, I am afraid that countless people will laugh at it. Everything is for the sake of the western region. You two are so messed up on the top of Nailan Duo. Have you ever thought about the western region? The female bodhisattva stretched out her hand and gently touched Musian's face, and said softly, "I wonder if you two can consider my proposal just now and leave Nalanda temple." Yao Meng looked at the unconscious Musian for a few times, then glanced meaningfully at the indifferent expression of the female bodhisattva, and chuckled, "I don't have any objections. After letting him go, I won't be there anymore." Nalanda takes action. Seeing that Emperor Qing agreed so simply, the evil witch could only nod lightly, "I don't have any objections, but there is a condition." Her eyes fell directly on Musian, "Leave him to me." Miao Bodhisattva nodded slightly, "Okay." She clasped her hands together and recited Buddhist sutras silently. The golden light rippled quietly like ripples, and the chains on Musian's body were untied, and the whole person was suspended in the air, slowly floating in the direction of Wei Mengru. Yao Meng didn't make any move, he just put his hands on his chest, held up his proud and tall chest, and watched the scene quietly. Finally, Musian floated to a stop in front of the evil witch. The young man was sleeping peacefully, with the cold wind blowing his hair a little messy. His handsome face had a hint of weakness, his lips were pale, and his facial features were delicate. His white robe with gold and silver threads was fluttering in the cold wind, exuding the elegance and nobility that a noble gentleman should have. The evil witch stared quietly. At this time, her personality had partially melted with Wei Mengru, and memories of the past kept flooding into her mind, so that when she looked at Musian, her eyes suddenly became blank. The coming of heaven is imminent, and leaving Kyushu is the best choice. Although the young master may not understand it now, he will definitely understand it in the future. Only while the evil side is still there can we finish this matter to the end. After the main character returned, with her original indecisive character, she would probably become ecstatic after being coaxed by the young master for a few words, and would not even think about taking him away from Kyushu. The black mist behind him quietly wrapped itself in the direction of Musian. In the black mist, a dark silk thread was about to wrap around one of Musian's wrists. But at this moment, Musian suddenly opened his eyes and stretched out his hand towards Wei Mengru. Wei Mengru reacted suddenly and subconsciously took half a step back. However, at some point, a green vine quietly wrapped around her ankle. Amitabha. At the same time, Miao Bodhisattva silently chanted the Buddha's name. Behind her, a huge Dharma image of a walker instantly unfolded, completely wrapping her in it, and the Buddha's name resounded through the sky. The Dharma image of the walker was like a giant that held up the world. As the sound of the Buddha's name sounded, the Dharma image raised a huge palm and slapped the golden Buddha seal towards the evil witch. Swish. However, when the Buddha seal approached the black fog, a sound like it was evaporated by flames came out. The people outside the Nalanda temple who noticed the movement were very surprised. Even the powerful people in the Hedeo realm were unwilling to fight with the Bodhisattva in the western regions. Who had such courage to force Miao Bodhisattva to take action? Who on earth has revived? It is rare to force the Bodhisattva to show his spirit and take action. I think it should be some powerful people who were in seclusion in the past, but it is still too irrational to cause trouble in the western regions. Until now, people outside Nalanda still don't know what happened in this temple. You two are trying to cheat me together. The witch of evil finally got angry, and a more terrifying mysterious black mist emanated from her body. All the spiritual energy centered on her seemed to be taken away in an instant. The vines of the pure world under her feet also withered. But in the black mist, there was still a person standing in the air. If you look closely, you can find that the black mist did not touch him at all, but passed directly over his body. The witch of evil had a hint of annoyance in her eyes. "Master, do you really think I dare not do anything to you?" Musian smiled and said, "Anyone in this world has the possibility of hurting me, but Sister Mengru is an exception, isn't it?" Wei Mengru sneered at him, "That's because you are just a little waste who has just realized the truth. If you touch my black mist, I'm afraid you will melt in an instant." Even if I am so despised for my strength, I will be sad. Musian shrugged. Then, he stared at the Witch of Evil and said with a smile, speaking of which, the witch's third spiritual consciousness has returned. Does Sister Mengru now have all the memories of the original witch? Because she remembered some memories that she had forgotten in the past, she wanted to take me away from Jizhu. Wei Mengru said coldly, young master, since you know, don't struggle. If you stay in Jizhu, you will be punished by the heavens sooner or later. Musian smiled, even so, I will stay here. Just because of a Shang Yanfei, for a moment, Wei Mengru's eyes were full of complexity. Not only because of the sect master, but also because of you. Musian stared at her and said softly, I am not referring to Sister Mengru, but you in this personality. The Witch of Evil was stunned, her eyes were slightly dazed. And at this moment, Musian seized the opportunity to face the diffused black fog and walked forward, hugged her, lowered his head slightly, and occupied her delicate and soft lips. The Witch of Evil suddenly opened her eyes wide, and seemed to be a little surprised why Musian would do such a thing in such an occasion. The black fog completely enveloped the two of them, and the huge spiritual energy of the heavenly court continued to flow into Wei Mengru's body. The endless spiritual energy seemed to be impacting her brain, and coupled with the unique warm breath of the boy, people could not help but subconsciously want to indulge in it. But soon, the Witch of Evil reacted and suddenly opened her eyes wide. No. He wanted to awaken the main personality. I wanted to reprimand Musian for not being a martial artist and actually attacking him, but at this time, Musian hugged her waist tightly, infusing the spiritual energy into her body in a more intense way, and his right hand through the dress tightly hugged her soft waist. The Witch of Evil realized that something was wrong and quietly raised her hand, but the black light on her fingertips had not yet condensed, and her body trembled slightly under another impact of the spiritual energy of the heavenly court, as if her soul was about to ascend to heaven. The temptation of the natural furnace of Yahua realm for women has reached an indescribable level. Before this, even Miao Bodhisattva, who was devoted to worshipping Buddha, was shaken, not to mention that the evil witch had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and she was so weak after just waking up. Wait a minute. She subconsciously begged Musian with a trembling voice. However, Musian ignored it. He was afraid that if he let go of Wei Mengru at this moment, all his efforts would be wasted. He just kept sending his sincere love to the maid in front of him. Don't be like this. The trembling voice came again in my ears. Compared with the arrogant demeanor when she fought with King Di just now, Wei Mengru's face showed a drunken blush at this moment, constantly suppressing the impulse in her heart. She subconsciously clamped her thighs, but her body softened in Musian's arms involuntarily. Although she tried her best to ask Musian to let her go, another voice in Wei Mengru's heart was unwilling to leave his arms. Gradually, under the impact of the spiritual energy of the heaven again and again, Wei Mengru's delicate body finally trembled involuntarily, her legs softened, and she stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Musian reacted quickly and hugged her tightly. Wei Mengru slowly raised her head, and her pair of silver eyes, which were originally like steel, gradually regained their original brightness. Finally back, Musian looked at Wei Mengru's face with a shy blush, her delicate body tensed, and after confirming her breath, he finally let go of her rosy little mouth, and finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Well, compared to the evil side, the original Sister Mengru is indeed more lovely. Musian wiped her red lips with his fingers and was about to let go. However, at this moment, a pair of hands hugged his waist and buried his face in his chest. Sister Mengru, it's all right. Before Musian finished speaking, he saw Wei Mengru raised her eyes full of humiliation and stared at him in shame. What's wrong? Musian thought she was angry because of the sneak attack just now, and explained, your evil side caused a lot of trouble just now, and I had to do it. I don't blame you. She pressed one hand on the hem of her skirt, mist filled her blurred eyes, and she rubbed her white legs subconsciously. You help me back to the room first, I need to take a bath. Diamond suit. Finally back, sounding. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us, we will handle it as soon as possible, thank you for your understanding. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 629. Because the previous room was destroyed, Musian had to meditate in Miao Bodhisattva's meditation room for the time being, waiting quietly for Wei Mengru to come back from taking a bath. At this moment, he closed his eyes silently and sat quietly on the futon, seemingly meditating. But in fact, it was just the delicate atmosphere in the Zen room at the moment that made him have no choice but to avoid it for the time being. Silence filled the entire Zen room. Yao Meng sat on the windowsill of the meditation room, staring at the young man who closed his eyes and meditated, and then quickly looked at the female bodhisattva whose temperament was somewhat similar to his own. Miao Bodhisattva also closed his eyes at this moment and recited Buddhist sutras. The original plan of the Western regions was to use him to exchange national fortunes with the Forbidden Land, right? I'm quite curious, what did he say to you that made you change your attention in the Western regions? At this time, a soft voice like the sound of nature sounded. The voice was as crisp as silver bells and the cold eyes were enough to make everyone who saw her subconsciously feel awe and admiration. Is it because of the natural furnace cauldron? Yao Meng asked softly again. The female bodhisattva slowly opened her eyes. The figure of the beautiful fairy was reflected in the cold eyes, and she said calmly, the Buddhism in the Western region does not allow any contact with the natural furnace. What I follow is the way to save all sentient beings. A playful smile appeared on Yao Meng's face. It seems that fairy Yao Meng does not believe what I said. Miao Bodhisattva said. Do you know what Tao was practiced in the past in Yaokai Holy Land? Yao Meng asked a seemingly insignificant question. Purify your heart. Bodhisattva Miao said indifferently, after practicing the way of pure heart in Yaokai, every word you speak contains fairy charm, which will naturally make people feel good. I think you will be able to get married with Mr. Mu later, or even Mr. Mu. I will fall in love with you, and it must be inseparable from the way of purifying the heart. I have never tempted him with Yaokai's ways, Yao Meng said with a smile. Even if you don't intend to seduce, your appearance and even the effect of purifying your heart will affect his emotions to some extent, making him inevitably fall in love with you. Miao Bodhisattva said calmly. Maybe. Yao Meng said with a smile but not a smile, then have you ever thought about it? The way of purifying the heart should require the cultivator to maintain his original mind and forget his feelings, but why am I still with him? Bodhisattva Miao raised her eyebrows slightly and said calmly, you have no feelings for him, so naturally it will not affect your way. Doesn't Bodhisattva think what he said is strange? Yao Meng chuckled softly, playing with a strand of hair with his fingertips, and looking at the meditating young man, if I have no feelings for him, why should I stay with him after he has ascended? Also, you said so much and even looked dismissive of me. You just think that I am approaching him because of the natural furnace, right? Arrogant and frivolous, there seems to be a hint of charm in his words. The female bodhisattva did not say a word, but quietly looked at the slender figure sitting in front of the windowsill, which turned all living beings upside down. Have you ever thought that you would show disdain for me, not because you really disdain, but because you are jealous of the relationship between me and him, and that I can practice dual cultivation with him at any time? Yao Meng paused. In addition, the so-called pure heart does not mean that you really want to forget your feelings. The way I cultivate in Yaokai is different from yours in the Western region. Although he often likes to play various small games with Musian now, and there are even a lot of props in the small dark room, Yao Meng has always maintained his way of purifying his heart. Let's talk about it, Maybe it means the same thing as those fair weather monks in the western regions, she continued casually. Miao Bodhisattva remained calm. The path I am walking on is destined not to be greedy for the natural cauldron, so why should I be jealous? Aren't you jealous? Yao Meng said with a half smile, when I broke through the shackles of heaven and earth, I didn't even expend much energy. That is to say, the original feathering of the heavenly tribulation was a little more troublesome. And all of this is thanks to the natural furnace cauldron. She looked at the female bodhisattva playfully. Are you really not jealous? When he said this, the fairy stopped talking and looked at the female bodhisattva with a playful smile in her beautiful green eyes. I have to say that Musian's vision is really quite good. Although the dress of this female bodhisattva is not revealing in any way, the white dress wraps her body perfectly, revealing only a pair of crystal white jade feet under the skirt. The 3,000 green silk strands scattered on her back naturally fall to her ankles. The golden halo behind him added a bit of holiness. She doesn't seem to be exposed, but it makes people feel itchy after looking at her more, as if she can see several different beauties from her body. This is somewhat similar to the woman Shang Yanfei. The Shang Yanfei in everyone's eyes is completely different, because the sect leader will appear in your field of vision as the type that people like the most. This is the so-called image of all living beings. The female bodhisattva seems to have similar Buddhist teachings, but there are not as many living beings as concubine Shang Yan. But even so, several different postures are tempting enough. No wonder that guy fell in love with her. Yao Meng narrowed his eyes and glanced at Musian, who was meditating inadvertently. His eyes stayed on his eyebrows that trembled inadvertently for a moment, and then he looked away without leaving a trace. Amitabha. Bodhisattva Miao, I said calmly, Donor Mu and I have made an agreement to hand him over to the forbidden land of samsara after this, but now that Emperor Qing is here, it's up to you to decide what you want to do. No need, just follow his plan. What surprised Miao Bodhisattva was that the fairy easily gave the choice back to Musian. Why are you looking at me with such unexpected eyes? Yao Meng glanced at her with a charming smile. I will unconditionally support whatever he does. Is it so strange? Is this a reward for him saving you? The female bodhisattva said softly. Not in return. Yao Meng pursed her red lips and said with a smile, if I have to say it, it should be about the husband singing and the wife following. Miao Bodhisattva said quietly, even if you are a human emperor, and he has just enlightened. Yao Meng raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a smile, even the human emperor cannot resist his suppression. The female bodhisattva was stunned for a moment, as if she didn't understand what she meant. It wasn't until he saw the charm in her eyes that he realized what he was doing and said calmly, if the monks in Zhuzhou knew that the fairy from Yaokai Holy Land was obsessed with a little monk, I don't know what they would think. Yao Meng said ha, and a faint smile appeared on that breathtakingly beautiful face. If you had tasted Tiansheng furnace once, you wouldn't say that. She did not talk to Miao Bodhisattva anymore, but walked up to Musian unhurriedly and leaned down slightly. Right, dear. After Yao Meng finished speaking, his figure disappeared into the room. Wei Mengru thought she had already finished taking a bath, and about the original witch, she already had some clues from her previous fight with the original witch. Now is the time to ask her. On the other side, as Yao Meng's voice fell, Musian couldn't help but tremble. He noticed a gaze in the room looking at him quietly, so he opened his eyes helplessly. Just in time to see the cyan figure disappear from sight. This Kingdi's sister is getting more and more excited. If there wasn't a female bodhisattva watching next to him, he might really be unable to control himself. You don't need to think about it to know that Yao Meng had noticed early on that he was pretending to meditate, but he didn't expose it. Musian raised his head and looked at Miao Bodhisattva, who was looking at him, and said with a smile, I'm really sorry for causing you a lot of trouble today. It doesn't matter, it didn't cause much damage. Bodhisattva Miao paused for a moment, is that woman in the yellow skirt your maid? Musian nodded. Her aura is very special. I used the rules in the Western region to try to restrict her actions, but she seems not to be affected by the rules. Musian smiled. Isn't the Ascension stage not affected by the rules? She is different from Qing Emperor. Qing Emperor will be somewhat affected by the rules in the Western region, because she was born in Kyushu, and all creatures in Kyushu will be affected to some extent. Bodhisattva Miao I said calmly, but you, the maid, are completely unaffected by the rules. Mu Jian's thoughts moved slightly, and he immediately thought of a person in his mind. The original witch. To this day, Mu Jian still does not know the identity of the original witch and how she was born. But Miao Bodhisattva's words gave him a trace of doubt. Perhaps the original witch was not a creature from Kyushu, but accidentally came to Kyushu from the vast alien starry sky in the past. Miss Wei's original mood today was in a state of jealousy, but after kissing you, she regained her personality. Why is this? The female bodhisattva quickly asked again. Mu Jian showed a mysterious smile. Keep it secret. The natural furnace cauldron can make a person have 7 emotions and 6 desires. When you inject the furnace cauldron's spiritual energy, she changes from her original evil personality to a loving personality, right? She asked casually. I didn't expect this bodhisattva to be so smart. He came to the correct conclusion just by observing. Mu Jian was speechless for a while and said, now that you know it, don't ask again. Where do you plan to go, Master Mu? Seeing Mu Jian standing up with his knees propped up, Miao Bodhisattva asked. A pair of delicate, snow-white feet were exposed under the hem of her white dress, and her dazzling white skin had a texture like ice crystals. There was no makeup on that cold face, but it was stunningly beautiful without makeup, and there was no emotion in the beautiful glass-like eyes. I went out to relax and see Sister Mengru. I'm afraid that her evil side will come out again later, Mu Jian said. He was not reassured. Although the spiritual energy of the furnace cauldron restored Wei Mengru to her original posture, no one knew whether the evil personality would be completely suppressed. You were pretending to be meditating just now, Bodhisattva Miao suddenly said. Mu Jian did not deny it, and smiled politely. I just don't want to disturb the conversation between you. Miao Bodhisattva did not say anything anymore, but gave Mu Jian a meaningful look. From Mu Jian's eyes, she once again keenly captured certain desires. I sighed quietly in my heart. This little monk had that desire for her again. How long has it been since no one in the Western region had such thoughts about her? After gathering the willpower of all living beings and achieving the status of Bodhisattva, there are very few people who dare to have any thoughts about her. Mu Jian is considered the first in recent years. Miao Bodhisattva looked at the windowsill where Qing Emperor was sitting just now, and soon recalled what the fairy said not long ago. The so-called way of purifying the heart is not to say that the Supreme Being forgets his feelings, but logically speaking, he shouldn't have a Taoist companion. After all, it will affect his own way. However, looking at it like this, after King Di was with the little monk, the strength does not seem to be affected. No, not only that, King Di is even much stronger than before. Miao Bodhisattva slowly closed his eyes, and his mind quickly recalled the intimacy between Mu Jian and his maid in Nalanda temple not long ago. Soon afterwards, he thought of all the things Mu Jian did to him not long ago. It is not that Miao Bodhisattva has never been pursued by others. Rather, in the past, too many people pursued her simply because of her beauty. However, no matter any monk in the Western region pursued her, most of them gave up the idea of pursuing her in the end due to the will of all living beings. As for the person who holds her hand and is somewhat intimate with her, to this day, the only one is Mu Jian. And unlike others, Mu Jian gave a very sincere pursuit condition, to become a feather and ascend. Yes, it's not about relying on the will of sentient beings, but about using the natural furnace to ascend. The other party was a monk from Dongzhou, and he had allowed the Qing Emperor and the Master of the Sword Palace to successfully become immortals and break free from the shackles of heaven and earth. Even the emergence of the queen of the demon realm is suspected to be related to him. In the Buddhist teachings of the Western regions, her way is certainly important, but what Muzian said before has to be taken seriously. However, the Western regions had secretly had many dirty cooperation with the southern wilderness. In a sense, Dongzhou and the Western regions had a hostile relationship. As one of the only two bodhisattvas in the Western region, she had no choice but to cooperate with the enemy. If she still agreed to his pursuit. From the time she joined the Dao to the present, she was respected by all the people in the Western region. If the relationship between her and Muzian accidentally spread, the consequences would be disastrous. Not to mention, she is a bodhisattva. The young monk in front of me may have become obsessed with her body and even her temperament, so he came up with the idea. You should have heard the conversation between me and Emperor Qing Bodhisattva Miao. I spoke softly. Muzian paused slightly as he was about to walk out of the room, turned around, smiled, and said, "You and Yao Meng are on different paths, so don't pay too much attention to what she said. In the final analysis, it is indeed a very difficult decision for you to give up the power of all sentient beings and use the natural furnace to ascend. However, it is certainly feasible to use the power of the will of sentient beings to become immortals and ascend, but after preparing for so long in the Western region, we can only allow one of the bodhisattvas to ascend in the end, right?" Bodhisattva Miao. I said nothing, but looked at Muzian with some surprise. Unexpectedly, he had only been in the Western region for a few days, but he had already noticed it. The willpower of all sentient beings in the Western region can only make one person ascend, not everyone. I wonder if it will be you, Manjushri Bodhisattva, or the Buddha who is now missing. There was something meaningful in his words. I will not disturb Miao Bodhisattva for now and take my leave. Looking at Miao Bodhisattva who fell into silence, Muzian turned around and left the meditation room. The female bodhisattva stands quietly on the lotus, seeming to be thinking about something. After being silent for an unknown amount of time, she suddenly vaguely saw a beam of golden light on the horizon, so she chanted Buddhist scriptures silently. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Manjushri Bodhisattva meditating on the other side of Nalanda. The female bodhisattva spoke in a calm tone, "What do you want to discuss with me?" Wei Mengru was soaking in the tub, with the water covering her shoulders. She raised her head slightly and exhaled slowly. Only now did she feel that the throbbing in her heart had eased. It's all because the young master was so tampering with her when he gave her the spiritual energy of the furnace, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. As if recalling some bad memories, the maid's cold face turned into an intoxicating blush, and she pursed her lips, feeling both ashamed and annoyed in her heart. She closed her eyes slightly, feeling that the three witches' spiritual consciousnesses were blending together with her own spiritual consciousness. At this point, her personality of 7 emotions and 6 desires finally returned completely. "It seems like you haven't gotten over the aftermath of what happened just now? Do you need me to help you call him to find you?" At this moment, a soft and pleasant voice suddenly came from her ears, which also brought Wei Mengru back to reality from her thoughts just now. "Why are you here?" Wei Mengru glanced slightly. The fairy in a green skirt was sitting beside her bathtub, looking sideways at her with a smile. In the hazy white mist, she could vaguely see her beautiful white skin and undulating curvature. Yao Meng smiled lightly and said, "I want to confirm whether the evil witch's side has really been suppressed. If he runs out again midway, I'm afraid I will have to shout to take him out of Kyushu again." Wei Mengru had an uncomfortable look on her face, obviously remembering her dark history. She said lightly, "It's okay. The evil side will only become the dominant personality in a short period of time when it returns. In most cases, I will stay awake." "Yao Meng, if I remember correctly, the evil witch said before that everything she did was part of your inner thoughts, right?" Wei Mengru snorted softly, "I did think before that he would not have to go back to Zhu, so that he could stay in heaven or go to heaven." Musian was able to pass through the ancient bronze coffin and let his body enter the heaven together, which is the immortal world spread among the monks in Kyushu today. As long as you enter the fairy world, you no longer have to worry about the reckoning after the coming of heaven. However, this was an idea in her heart, but this idea was not very strong, but she did not expect that it would be infinitely amplified by her evil side, and twisted into the idea of taking Musian away by force. Yao Meng looked at the red petals covered on the water, and played with the petals slowly with her fingertips, and asked casually, "By the way, have you also become an immortal?" Wei Mengru shook her head gently. "To be precise, it wasn't me who became immortal, but the original witch who became immortal and ascended." Yao Meng glanced at her and said calmly, "Isn't that the same as you becoming immortal and ascending? This is the same as Bairuoxi, who has two souls in one body. Now, Bairuoxi's spiritual consciousness has not yet merged, but Gong Lianyu has ascended into immortality, so she can also switch spiritual consciousness and show the strength of the immortalization realm at any time." "That's right, if you have to say so." A complex look flashed in Wei Mengru's eyes. Boom boom. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. "Sister Mengru, have you finished taking a bath?" Musian's voice came from outside the house. Wei Mengru came back to her senses and said calmly, "Come in." Musian opened the door, stopped in front of the screen, and vaguely saw a beautiful figure taking a bath. Behind the screen, a graceful figure could be vaguely seen. Musian recognized the other party's identity and said in surprise, "Yao Meng, why are you here too?" "Can't I come over?" Yao Meng asked with a smile. "Did I disturb the world between you and Miss Wei?" Musian shook his head. "That's not true. I just want to confirm Sister Mengru's current situation. And compared to the world of two, it is actually more fun to get along with you at the same time," he continued. "This sounds almost like I want to have a party." As if remembering something he had done with Musian and other women before, Yao Meng, who was sitting by the tub, quickly flashed a blush on his face, and gave him a charming look through the screen. "Sister Mengru, how do you feel now?" Musian suddenly asked. "It's okay now." Wei Mengru's tone was as cold as ever. Then she hesitated. "Sorry, I caused you a lot of trouble." It is rare to hear such an apology from a maid, and it is enough to imagine that her heart is indeed full of apologies at this moment. Musian smiled. "In fact, it didn't cause any trouble, but I got to see another side of Sister Mengru. I must say it was a profit." "Well, it's indeed a profit. I didn't realize that Miss Wei has such a side before." At this moment, a sweet and clear voice suddenly sounded. In front of Musian, an extremely illusory figure seemed to appear vaguely, with silver hair, red eyes, and white silk covering her slender legs, which looked particularly hazy and beautiful. "New way of heaven." Yuan Luo looked at the maid behind the screen, with a hint of teasing in her tone. "I never expected that Miss Wei, who usually follows her master without fighting or grabbing her, would actually have someone who wants to hide in the young master's arms and act coquettishly. My little girlfriend's dream. Actually, if you had said it earlier, he would definitely not mind. Maybe he is quite happy that his sister Mengru will act coquettishly with him." Behind the screen, Wei Mengru's face flushed extremely red, even her crystal earlobes felt a little hot, and she silently covered her face. Normally she would just sneer back, but today her evil side exposed her dark history. Now the society is dead. Want to hide in his arms and act like a baby. Yao Meng also glanced at Wei Mengru in surprise. She blinked her beautiful green eyes, and then quickly, the corners of her mouth curved slightly. "I didn't expect Miss Wei to have such thoughts." There was something profound in the words. "That's almost it? Sister Mengru is really going to die if we continue talking." Musian coughed lightly and said seriously, "Yuan Luo, why did you appear in Kyushu? Didn't you say that if you come directly, you may be killed by the will of heaven? Did you notice it?" Yuan Luo curled her lips, After I become stronger, I will no longer be able to deceive heaven no matter what, so it doesn't matter anymore. It sounded more like being open, Mu Jian cursed in his heart. At this time, Yuan Luo raised her head and looked at Mu Jian with a smile. Now we have no way back. You need to win over more people to resonate with me. For example, the Bodhisattva in the Western region is good. It can be seen that she has already produced. Don't hesitate, just use your body to seduce her, and she might agree. Mu Jian's forehead was covered with black lines. Who do you think I am? Yuan Luo glanced at the young man and raised an arrogant curve at the corner of her mouth. Heh. Why are you laughing? One day I will find a chance to open champagne with you. Mu Jian calmed down slightly. Anyway, according to your wishes, you want more powerful people to resonate with you, right? Yuan Luo nodded slightly. Now Miss Wei, the Bodhisattva from the Western region, the god of space in the southern wilderness and others, can win them over. Maybe we can't give them the conditions to ascend in a short time, but if I promise you as a reward, I believe they will be very happy. In short, let's get along with Miss Wei first. When Yuan Luo said this, she walked behind the screen with her hands behind her back. She suddenly stopped and turned to look at Mu Jian. You are not allowed to come over. I am the master of Sister Mengru. Mu Jian sighed and had to wait in front of the screen. While waiting, he suddenly remembered something important. Sister Mengru, you have been trying to take me away from Kyushu since you turned dark today. Did you see something in the memory of the original witch? Even if the Dakian dynasty is not destroyed, the law of heaven will eventually come. He will punish those who violate the rules of heaven and earth, and among them, you are the primary target. Wei Mengru's voice came from behind the screen. Heaven, possessing humanity, is eyeing me? Well, it's not unexpected. Sister Sect Master has done so much just to protect me against the law of heaven. Mu Jian asked again, were you or the Sect Master the one who suppressed the Forbidden Land in the past? This is also the issue that concerns him most now. I am the one who suppresses the Forbidden Land, but it is also her, Wei Mengru said. Mu Jian was stunned for a moment, thinking that you seemed to have said it but not completely. The spiritual consciousness of the original witch can be integrated with Sect Master Shang without any hindrance. In the past, when I was sleeping, it was her spiritual consciousness that merged with the original witch to suppress the forbidden place. After hearing Wei Mengru's answer, Mu Jian pondered for a while and continued, then what is the relationship between the Sect Master and you, or the Sect Master and the original witch? This time, Wei Mengru remained silent for a long time. It's not clear yet. The spiritual consciousness between me and the original witch has not been completely integrated. It will take some time. Finally, she answered in a calm tone. Mu Jian showed a thoughtful expression. It seems that we can only wait until Sister Mengru is completely integrated with the original witch's spiritual consciousness before making any plans. All he has to do now is wait for the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation to take him away. It would be best to capture Miao Bodhisattva before that, to avoid a temporary rebellion in the western region when heaven comes. The more powerful people resonate with the new way of heaven, the stronger Yuan Luo's combat power will be, and the chips in their hands will also increase. Why does it suddenly feel a bit like a training game? By persuading other powerful people to resonate with the new way of heaven, Yuan Luo can be upgraded bit by bit. I wonder if Xiao Yuan Luo's card will change again after she reaches full level. Although the card surface of New Tiandao is already great. Mu Jian thought about this and said at the right time, it will take some time for Hideo to resonate. I'll go back and meditate for a while. After saying that, he turned around and left the room. If his guess is correct, his words today and Yao Meng's words must have shaken Miao Bodhisattva. Mu Jian was very curious. On the one hand, she will definitely be able to ascend to heaven, on the other hand, she will need to compete with Manjushri Bodhisattva and even the Buddha for the power of all living beings in the future. What will she choose in the end? A Bodhisattva's will is not so easily shaken, and perhaps she will eventually choose the power of the will of all living beings. But at least while he is still in the Western region, he can try to win over him again. After all, when chasing girls, it doesn't matter if you fail once or twice, the important thing is patience. At this moment, in a certain meditation room, Manjushri Bodhisattva is sitting quietly on the futon, with his hands clasped together and looking ahead. In the corner of the Zen room, a female Bodhisattva in white turned into an illusory figure. She said, "Is it because of the battle between the Qing Emperor of Nalanda and the mysterious man that you came to me today?" "It has nothing to do with today's matter. In the final analysis, the matter between Qing Emperor and the mysterious man has nothing to do with us," Manjushri Bodhisattva said slowly. "Miao Bodhisattva, what exactly is that?" Manjushri Bodhisattva said calmly, "I have peeked into the future in the past 2 days. The life and death of the Buddha are unknown now. If heaven comes in the future, it may liquidate us. But maybe, it may also choose us. In the final analysis, Tiandao is the assembly of all creatures in Kyushu. It will not completely wipe out all the creatures in this world. Once it learns that there is a digital feather realm in Kyushu, it will give priority to liquidating these existences that escape the rules of heaven and earth. Unless before that, those Yahua have left Kyushu." There was a trace of fluctuation in Miao Bodhisattva's indifferent eyes. "You mean that Tiandao will not be an enemy of the entire 9 provinces, and it is very likely to bribe some of them, and the Western region is one of them?" "Good." Manjushri Bodhisattva nodded slightly. "It is still unclear how heaven will decide, but making 2 preparations in advance is the best strategy. Fighting against heaven is not a wise move, but going against heaven. In the final analysis, Muzian is a monk from Dongzhou. You cannot believe everything he says. We are cooperating with him now, but we may not necessarily have a cooperative relationship in the future." Bodhisattva Miao raised her beautiful eyebrows slightly, stepped on the lotus with her white and crystal clear jade feet, and said calmly, "Muzian cannot be trusted, and the way of heaven may not be trustworthy either. Don't forget, the way of heaven today is probably not the way of heaven it used to be. We have human nature, and humans are creatures with desires and bad instincts. Even so, I am still more willing to believe in the way of heaven than Muzian. Of course, the premise is that it throws an olive branch," Manjushri Bodhisattva said solemnly. "Heaven will not be hostile to the entire 9 provinces. Perhaps in the future it will propose that as long as we are willing to stand aside, it will not settle the Western regions. By then, we can gather the power of the wishes of all living beings in the Western regions and ascend to heaven." Miao Bodhisattva stopped talking. "How many monks are pursuing to ascend to heaven with the help of the power of the wishes of all living beings in the Western regions? But the question is, who will ascend to heaven? The power of the wishes of all living beings accumulated in the Western regions over the years is far from enough to allow both Bodhisattvas to ascend to heaven. So, is it her, or the Manjushri Bodhisattva in front of her, who is much more senior than her? Or will she keep the power of all living beings and wait for the return of the Buddha?" Miao Bodhisattva said calmly, "The Buddha is not here now. If Manjushri Bodhisattva gathers the power of all living beings and ascends to heaven in the future, my Western region will finally be blessed by the realm of eternity." This seems to tacitly agree that Manjushri Bodhisattva gathers the power of all living beings, but it is actually a test. If Manjushri Bodhisattva did not have this idea, he would be somewhat hesitant at this moment. However, Manjushri Bodhisattva just smiled and nodded. "After this, I will also prepare the wish power of sentient beings for Miao Bodhisattva to ascend to heaven." This sounded very sincere, but it sounded extremely hypocritical in Miao Bodhisattva's ears at this moment. The Western region has been preparing for tens of thousands of years, and it can only allow such a person to ascend to heaven. A Hedeo realm can only live for 2 lives. Even with the blessing of the divine medicine, it can only extend the lifespan by another 20,000 years at most. It is impossible to survive for longer because of the restrictions of the rules of heaven and earth. Can she wait until the next time to gather the wish power of sentient beings? I know. Miao Bodhisattva broke the silence. If there is nothing else, I will go back first. Manjusri Bodhisattva nodded gently and smiled. Remember to hand Muzian over to the Forbidden Land after this. Miao Bodhisattva did not say anything else, and her figure disappeared in the Zen room like a bubble. In her cold eyes, there seemed to be some confusion that had never been there before. She has been practicing hard for the Western regions, and even finally achieved the status of Bodhisattva. However, because of the experience of the past few days, Miao Bodhisattva is a little more confused. Kingdi, who practices the way of purifying the heart, can ascend to heaven with the help of the natural furnace, and Miao Bodhisattva can naturally do so. But she is different from Kingdi. She is a Bodhisattva of the Western regions and should not have such desires. No wonder Muzian is so envious of the taboo masters. She sighed in her heart. When Miao Bodhisattva opened her eyes again, she happened to see the young man who had just sat down in front of the futon. His eyes were scanning Miao Bodhisattva's curvaceous figure. In fact, she always felt a little strange about this young man. He obviously had a beautiful fairy-like Kingdi, and the maids around him were also beautiful. But for some reason, when he was with her, he often looked at her obsessively, and even reacted to her feet. His desire was too strong, which could easily affect his future practice. Just as Miao Bodhisattva was thinking about these messy things, Muzian seemed to have noticed something, raised his head and said with a smile. It seems that you have encountered some trouble. A 10,000-word chapter. I originally wanted to ask for a ticket and a blade, then I looked at the time. Well, it's November 1st, so I'll just go with the flow. Crying. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 630. For Muzian, although there had been several frictions between the Western region and the Eastern continent before, and the relationship between the two sides was extremely bad, this did not affect his cooperation with the Western region. In the final analysis, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now that there is a common imaginary enemy, the Western region will not make any betrayal in the short term. Just to be on the safe side, he needs to make another layer of insurance. Miao Bodhisattva is the best candidate for this insurance. It's just that he had been troubled by not knowing how to conquer this female Bodhisattva, and he never found a suitable opportunity. And judging from the expression of Miao Bodhisattva when she returned to the Zen room at this moment, it seems that something unpleasant happened not long ago. Perhaps, this will be an opportunity. Your expression seems to be different from usual. What happened? Muzian asked with a concerned tone. Miao Bodhisattva naturally did not intend to tell Muzian what happened before, and said calmly, it's just a small matter, Mr. Mu, don't worry about it. Compared to this, if nothing unexpected happens, the Samsara Forbidden Land should send someone to take you away from Nalanda Temple in the next 2 days. You must be prepared before that. Muzian smiled and nodded, don't worry, I'm mentally prepared. As he said, he seemed to think of something, and couldn't help but sighed. After this separation, I don't know when we will meet again. Miao Bodhisattva said calmly, as long as there is fate, it is not difficult to see each other again, unless Mr. Mu is trapped in the Samsara Forbidden Land from now on and it is difficult to leave. But this is impossible. Even if Muzian is really trapped in the Forbidden Land in the end, someone will take him out of the Samsara Forbidden Land. After all, there are more people who want the natural furnace and cauldron ore than those 3 forbidden lands. You don't look very happy, what happened? Muzian asked. Bodhisattva Miao glanced at Muzian. Mr. Mu is really perceptive. Muzian smiled, observing people's emotional changes is what I am good at. After that, he stopped talking. After a while, the female bodhisattva stared at Muzian. Aren't you curious about what happened to me just now? I am indeed curious, but I think you won't answer if I ask you. You will tell me when you want to. Hearing Muzian's words, Bodhisattva Miao I could not help but remain silent. In any case, the dispute between her and Manjusri Bodhisattva about the power of sentient beings is also an internal matter of the Western regions. It is not convenient for Muzian to know about it, even if they are now in a cooperative relationship with Muzian. Afterwards, she suddenly glanced at Muzian and frowned inadvertently. This young man has that kind of thought about her again. She couldn't help but sigh softly, and her originally cold tone also added a bit of helplessness. Mr. Mu obviously already has a Taoist partner, why is he still so obsessed with me? You don't have to lie, I can see a person's 7 emotions and 6 desires. In front of me, none of your desires can escape my eyes. The Tao rhyme you practice is really troublesome. Muzian smiled, but since you said so, then Mu will not hide it. Muzian suddenly stretched out his hand and boldly grabbed the soft little hand of the female bodhisattva. Before Bodhisattva Miao I could get angry, Muzian said, I do like you, but I will also respect your wishes. From now on, I will not pester you anymore. Bodhisattva Miao I was stunned for a moment, and then she spoke in a cold tone, if that's the case, why did you hold my hand before, say those love words to me, and even tell me that I can ascend to heaven with the help of the natural furnace? Muzian smiled bitterly and said, if I say that I just couldn't control my impulse at the time and simply wanted to express my inner thoughts, would you believe it? I don't mean anything else, I just like you, that's all. Bodhisattva Miao I was stunned, and her cold eyes slightly fluctuated. Like. If she hadn't confirmed the sincerity in Muzian's eyes, and even felt the sincerity in his heart, she would have even doubted whether she had heard it wrong. This little cultivator who already has a Taoist partner actually said like so bluntly? Even though she could feel Muzian's sincerity, she still felt it was quite unreal. This young man, isn't it enough to have the Green Emperor? And she is a bodhisattva from the western regions, it's impossible for the two of them. Bodhisattva Miao I fell into a brief silence, her eyes inadvertently glanced to one side, she didn't want to look into Muzian's sincere eyes again. After a moment of silence, she said softly, Mr. Mu, it's impossible for you and me. If I agree to become a Taoist partner with you, my bodhisattva status will change, and the resonance between the heavenly Dao and me will no longer exist. Several great men in Jus who basically chose to resonate with the heavenly Dao, even the western regions were no exception. It's just that the cultivation method in the western regions is more special. Only by inheriting the fruit position of the western regions first can you resonate with the Dao. And to inherit the bodhisattva status, you must cut off the emotional ties and abandon the 7 emotions and 6 desires. But even so, the Qing Emperor's way of purifying the heart says that you should forget your emotions, but she didn't forget her emotions, anyway, she became more attractive. It doesn't matter, I can understand the bodhisattva's feelings, in fact, I also know that you can't accept me. Muzian raised his head and showed a helpless smile, Bodhisattva Miao I know some of my words may be a blasphemy to you, because the law practiced in the western regions requires cutting off the 7 emotions and 6 desires, and having no desires or demands. It's just that before leaving, I want to express my true thoughts in my heart anyway, at least without regrets. There was a strong sincerity in his tone. This time, Bodhisattva Miao I was silent. Although her Buddhist heart had been firm before, Muzian's words made her a little confused for a while. It is very common for bodhisattvas in the western regions to reject the love of mortal monks. Because in the past, those monks were attracted by her beauty. And Muzian, well, it seems that he was also attracted by her beauty. But unlike others, this young man is very sincere, and, the aura of the natural furnace is indeed wonderful. Goodbye. Muzian did not give the female bodhisattva any time to think. After a reluctant look at her, he raised his hands and bowed, turned around and walked out of the room. Miao Bodhisattva was stunned and subconsciously said, "Where are you going?" Her eyes were a little complicated, and she subconsciously took a half step forward. But in the end, she stopped and did not stop Musian. Musian looked back at the female bodhisattva and whispered, "Didn't you also say that the day of the transaction between the Western region and the Forbidden Land is approaching, and I should go and prepare in advance? In addition, Mu has one last suggestion for you. The heavenly Dao has human nature, which means that resonating with it means being at its mercy. If possible, give up the heavenly Dao as soon as possible." After that, he did not hesitate any more and turned to walk towards the door of the Zen room. He did not intend to persuade Miao Bodhisattva to resonate with the new heavenly Dao. After all, a forced melon is not sweet, and there is no need for this. Miao Bodhisattva quietly watched Musian's back. For some reason, seeing him leave so resolutely, the female bodhisattva felt an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. When Musian was about to step out of the door, a cold voice suddenly came from behind, "Can I ask you a question? You pursued me and even expressed your motive for liking me. Is it because of my appearance and this body, or do you have other feelings?" Silence permeated the Zen room. Musian slowly turned around and looked at Miao Bodhisattva. "There is no doubt that you are a very beautiful woman, even among the people I have seen, you are the most beautiful one, but I will pursue you not just for the vulgar reasons of beauty or body." He walked slowly to the front of Miao Bodhisattva, looked up at the white-clothed woman standing on the lotus, and whispered, "Your appearance of all living beings reminds me of a woman I saw when I was born. That was a memory I just recalled not long ago. I can be sure that the woman was not my mother, but she was very gentle. At that time, her face looked very tired. There were still traces of tears on her face, but strangely, she smiled. It was a very warm smile. Although that face is so blurred that I can hardly remember it now, I have a feeling of nostalgia. From your appearance of all living beings, I saw that blurred but very beautiful face." Miao Bodhisattva's eyes moved slightly and asked, "I know that the higher the realm of a cultivator, the more he can recall the memories of his childhood, but you have been enlightened for a while, why did you only remember this memory recently?" "It may be because the shielded secrets are gradually disappearing," Musian said softly. "The original Jizu seemed to be covered by an invisible black curtain, and now, the black curtain was gradually being devoured by the coming heavenly Dao." Musian originally wondered if the blurred face in his memory was the sect master, but he quickly denied this conjecture. Because in his impression, the sect master's sister was so calm and indifferent that she could not show a smile of joy and tears. "Of course, in my eyes, you are not a substitute for that person. Now I want to cherish the person in front of me more." At this moment, Musian's eyes were full of affection, and there seemed to be a wisp of pink breath in the dark eyes. For some reason, a strong desire suddenly surged in the heart of Miao Bodhisattva. Not only because of the spiritual temptation of the natural furnace, but also because of Musian's sincerity that shook her will. And when Miao Bodhisattva's thoughts were still in chaos, Musian suddenly reached out and grabbed one of her wrists, and then gently pulled it, stepped directly on the lotus, and roughly hugged her soft waist into his arms. Miao Bodhisattva did not make any resistance. With her ability, it would be easy to stop Musian, but she never did it. She just lowered her head slightly, like a kind mother who pities all living beings, and put her hand on the back of Musian's head, gently stroking his hair, letting him hold her delicate body in his arms. "Sorry, I can't help it." Musian gazed at the female bodhisattva affectionately and said softly, "If you refuse, it's not too late now." After he finished speaking, under Miao Bodhisattva's panic-stricken eyes for the first time, he kissed her red lips. It was just lips touching each other, and she had even tried it once before. However, the feeling when Musian took the initiative was completely different from the feeling she took the initiative that time. The soft touch and warm breath make people want to leave all their worries behind and just want to immerse themselves in this forbidden love. Miao Bodhisattva's body trembled slightly, but his face remained sullen, but there was a hint of shyness in his eyes as cold as glass, and he subconsciously took half a step back. Muzian seized the opportunity to stop the slender waist of the female bodhisattva and pressed forward. Miao Bodhisattva was pressed to the floor by him, her beautiful eyebrows slightly furrowed, and her soft little hands seemed a little confused as to where to place them. The two of them were face to face, and their breath seemed to be blowing on each other's face. After the young man in front of her stared at her for a long time, he couldn't help but admired, she is indeed a bodhisattva from the western regions. She is so beautiful. These words are indeed true, but with the rich emotional experience of this young man, he probably has said it to many women. The thought of Miao Bodhisattva just flashed through his mind, and before he could speak, Muzian's mouth was touched again. Kiss her, feeling the touch of her soft lips. Time passed silently. After an unknown amount of time, the originally tight body gradually relaxed. The female bodhisattva slowly opened her misty eyes. Her beautiful face was extremely hot, and there was a touch of affection on her brows, allowing Muzian to pursue her. Stimulate. Pleasure. And taboos. This is not the emotion a bodhisattva from the western regions should have. This is Nalanda temple, and being intimate in a place like this is not allowed. But the strength in her body seemed to be drained, and she had no strength to push Muzian away. In other words, I don't want to push him away. Yes. Ever since she took the initiative to try the spiritual energy of the Tian furnace cauldron, she had fallen in love with that feeling. With the blessing of her rules in the western region, it would be easy to push Muzian away or even suppress him. But she didn't do that. Because she was deliberately seducing the young man in front of her and longing to bathe in the aura of the natural furnace. Not only did he want the little spiritual energy he got during the kiss, but he wanted more furnace spiritual energy. Miao Bodhisattva's soft little hands tightly grasped the hem of the plain white skirt, and slowly opened her eyes with a hint of charm. Then, she held the boy's face, leaned into his ear, and said a seductive voice that even she felt was strange and sweet. You can do whatever you want, you're welcome. I finished it today. I ate a crab at noon and now I feel sick to my stomach. I need to take a rest and sleep. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 631. By the way, there have been many secret collaborations between the western regions and the southern wilds in the past. Were you involved in preventing Yao Meng from reuniting her immortal body and even stopping her from ascending to heaven? Muzian was lying on his side in the quilt, holding the beauty's slender waist with one hand, and suddenly asked casually. Miao Bodhisattva said calmly, although Nalanda Temple and SpecialAbilities Temple are both in the western regions, they are not quite the same. In most cases, Nalanda Temple will not participate in the dispute in Juzhu, but when King Di ascended to heaven, Nalanda did send people. She did not deny this fact. In the final analysis, how many people in Juzhu hoped that King Di would ascend to heaven at that time? It can be said that there were almost none. Even if some people did not take action, it did not mean that they hoped that a great power that transcended the rules of heaven and earth would appear in the future and surpass Juzhu. So among the two bodhisattvas that appeared at that time, were there people from Nalanda Temple? Muzian looked thoughtful. When he hugged the female bodhisattva's waist, he could clearly feel that she pursed her lips slightly, her body tensed, and she seemed a little uncomfortable. The experienced Muzian did not let go, but gently pinched her soft waist and said with a smile, "Are you shy?" Showing such an embarrassing posture in front of a junior who was only 19 years old was obviously unacceptable to Miao Bodhisattva. She said in a clear and cold voice, "The Tao I practiced has eliminated the 7 emotions and 6 desires, so how can I be shy? Now I just want to confirm whether your natural furnace can really help the great master of Hedao break free from the shackles of heaven and earth, So I cooperate with you. This degree will not disturb my mood. Why does it sound quite arrogant? Muzian smiled and said, that's good, it seems that I worry too much. Bodhisattva Miao glanced at Muzian, forced herself to be calm, and said lightly, you don't have to feel any pressure or burden. You and I are practicing together for the upcoming heavenly Dao, for the western regions, and even for the countless sentient beings in Kyushu. Although I am a bodhisattva, I am not someone who does not know the priorities of things. The mouth is really hard, but it is quite soft when kissing. Muzian asked with concern, does the bodhisattva need me to take the initiative? After all, you don't seem to have much experience. No, I can do it myself. Her voice suddenly stagnated, and the back of her foot subconsciously tightened. Until a while later, Bodhisattva Miao finally recovered a little, frowned her delicate eyebrows, raised her chin slightly, and glanced at the young man with a faint look, as if silently accusing him of not being a martial artist. Before she was ready, this person took action. At this time, Muzian suddenly thought of something, put his hands on her waist, and asked, by the way, do you have a good relationship with the forbidden land of reincarnation? Yan actually cooperated with you. The stiff body of Miao Bodhisattva gradually relaxed, and there was a trace of trembling in her cold voice. Generally, she should be helpless. The first generation of the Lord of Reincarnation made her anxious. When she said this, as if she thought of something, a faint smile appeared on her face. If you have to say it, the Western region and the Green Emperor are still enemies. If the Green Emperor knew that you were with her enemy. The corners of the female bodhisattva's mouth curled up slightly. I don't know what she would think. Muzian thought for a moment and smiled, whether we were enemies before, at least I am in a cooperative relationship with the Western region now. Also, if Yao Meng finds out, she won't say anything. But you. Muzian leaned on her shoulder and whispered, what would happen if the believers in the Western region found out about our relationship? She could almost clearly feel the delicate body of the female bodhisattva in her arms tremble slightly, as if Muzian's words had hit her soft spot. She opened her mouth slightly and was about to explode. But at this time, Muzian seemed to have hit her soft spot, and smiled, don't worry, no third person will find out. I will let you ascend to heaven. The premise is that the Western region will not betray me and Dongzhou when the heavenly Dao descends. In addition, the matter between you and me will also be a secret. When the room fell into silence, Muzian suddenly thought of something and asked, Miao Bodhisattva, you should have arranged the shielding formation, right? Next, I will start to transfer the aura of the furnace to you. It will be bad if you are discovered. Of course, I still know this most basic thing. If Mr. Mu teases me again, the agreement between you and me will end, and I will no longer rely on your aura to ascend to heaven. The tone of the female bodhisattva was still full of inhuman indifference. The bodhisattva misunderstood. I just wanted to be on the safe side. I didn't mean to tease you. Why are you shaking? Is it because you are cold? It's okay, can you keep quiet, Mu? The shielding formation only blocks the breath inside, but some cultivators with higher realms can still hear the sound. Still indifferent answer. Can you move your hand away? You can transfer the spiritual energy without moving it, right? Miao Bodhisattva put one hand on her chest, her eyes were still indifferent, trying to maintain the dignity of the Western region Bodhisattva. At this time, Muzian held her hand, and she clasped her fingers together, just looking at her with a gentle smile. Although her attitude was cold and unkind on weekdays, Miao Bodhisattva, who had no emotional experience, blushed when he stared at her, bit her lips lightly, and turned her face away from him. It was clearly just for the sake of immortality. Logically, she should have no feelings for Muzian, but why did she show the shyness that only girls have at this moment? She was a little confused, but at this moment, she suddenly felt a hand grabbing the sole of her foot. Miao Bodhisattva subconsciously lowered her head, but saw that the boy was holding one of her jade feet and playing with it. She couldn't help but frowned and said, Donor Mu, this has nothing to do with giving the furnace aura, right? Before you practice, you will also circulate the aura in your body for a few weeks before starting, right? Musian asked back. Another meaning of this is, the small game before starting must be there. The female bodhisattva fell into silence, but slowly, looking at the boy who was trying his best to please her, her eyes gradually became a little hazy. The furnace aura began to gradually flow into the body. Until a while later, the female bodhisattva's originally cold eyes were stained with a touch of emotion, and she couldn't help biting her lower lip, as if an indescribable excitement surged in her heart. And when she thought that the Green Emperor was still in the next room, this excitement became even stronger. This feeling made Miao Bodhisattva feel a little flustered. Although it was for the purpose of ascending to heaven, the joy that surged in her heart at this moment, is this really allowed as a Western region Bodhisattva? Perhaps, she was looking forward to this from the beginning. She initially rejected Musian's love, but she did not reject it harshly, nor did she keep a distance from him. Perhaps, it was because she also had a little expectation in her heart. Expecting that this child would not give up, but would pursue herself again. Then, with her, do more and more wrong things. Reincarnation Forbidden Land. In a silent secret room, Yan, the Lord of Reincarnation, slowly opened her eyes from meditation. Is there any news from the teacher? She asked the spy who had just entered the secret room not long ago. The spy said respectfully, there is no movement from the first generation of the Lord of Samsara for the time being, but someone saw his disciple coming in from the east side of the forbidden area yesterday. It seems that he secretly left the forbidden area of Samsara and went somewhere. Oh! A yellow-haired girl in the Return to Void realm, what can the teacher secretly send her out to do? Yan played with a strand of hair on her fingertips, and then quickly chuckled, forget it, since there is no movement from the teacher for the time being, we can take Musian back first. The woman straightened her back slightly and played with the glass ball in her hand that looked only the size of a palm. On the surface of the sphere, there was a vortex slowly rotating, exuding an ancient atmosphere. You can go and prepare the Dongzhou national fortune you got before, and you can complete this transaction with the Western region, Yan said with a smile. Yes. After the spy said that, he seemed to have thought of something again, and hesitated. What about Lady Isis? Yan chuckled, and her slender fingertips with red nail polish gently pressed against her seductive red lips, and her voice was full of wet charm. Why are you in such a hurry? Let me taste the child's natural furnace first, and then it won't be too late to give it to Isis. Go and bring the person. Remember, don't let my teacher notice. She raised her hand to signal the spy to withdraw, and then closed her eyes and dozed off. It must be said that even without the reincarnation forbidden items, her teacher is still extremely difficult, and it is difficult to get rid of that old thing even with Isis's help. This is also a helpless thing. The rules of the reincarnation forbidden land are only effective for Nin. Isis is in the realm of feathering in the immortal forbidden land, but she is just a great power of the combined way who is bound by the rules after leaving the immortal forbidden land. If you want to get rid of the teacher, she and Isis must be able to truly feather and ascend. Fortunately, a war cannot be decided in 1 or 2 months. After capturing Musian, as long as he serves me and Isis well, it is only a matter of time before he ascends to heaven. I heard that the young man had an affair with the Green Emperor, and he was Bairuoxi's Taoist partner, and he also had an unclear relationship with the charming queen of the demon realm. Heh, it's obvious that he must be a playboy. She originally liked Musian very much, but now, she likes him even more diamond-sued. After all, a man who can be favored by so many powerful people finally surrenders to her. Isn't it exciting to think about it this way? Besides, this boy is handsome and fair-skinned. If the heavenly Deo comes to settle accounts with Joshu in the future, if he is still alive, he can stay by his side as a servant. Yan twisted her hair and twisted it carelessly with her fingers, but a sweet arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. It's really exciting. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 632. Zen Room. Miao Bodhisattva took off her white robe and soaked in the bathtub. It was late at night and there was only one candle in the room. The dim light added a bit of warmth. She closed her eyes slightly, as if the coldness on her face was also melting in the warm water. Miao Bodhisattva raised her head and looked at the misty water in the bathtub, and slowly exhaled. After this double cultivation, she could already feel exactly how wonderful the spiritual energy of the natural furnace was. It was an indescribable feeling. It was like ascending to heaven. Since Miao Bodhisattva resonated with the heaven, she became one of the bodhisattvas in the western regions and was respected by the world. But at the same time, she seemed to be covered by an invisible net, and from then on she was constrained by the rules, and her realm could not be improved a bit. However, after this double cultivation, she seemed to have a feeling, a kind of invisible net that enveloped her, seemed to be swallowed up bit by the furnace spiritual energy injected by Musion. Miao Bodhisattva was not proficient in the magic of deducing the secrets of heaven, but she was almost certain that as long as this continued for a period of time, when the net that restricted her was completely devoured, it would be the day for her to ascend to heaven. I didn't expect that I would take another path in the end. Miao Bodhisattva looked up at the hazy mist and couldn't help but sigh softly. She knew that her state of mind had fluctuated since the moment she knew about the natural furnace. It was just not so obvious at that time. But she knew that the way of heaven was about to come, and she also knew that Manjusri Bodhisattva wanted the power of sentient beings to condense his body. There were only two ways left for her, either to compete with Manjusri for the power of sentient beings in the end, or to give up and take another path. The result was obvious, she chose another way to ascend to heaven. The various scenes of her and Musion in the Zen room flashed through her mind again, and a blush flashed across Miao Bodhisattva's face. She lay quietly in the bathtub, taking the spiritual energy that Musion had given her not long ago into her furnace. At this time, there was a polite knock on the door. "Hello, may I come in?" The voice sounded crisp and pleasant, a girl's voice. Miao Bodhisattva said briefly, and then saw a silver-haired loli push the door in, with a pair of innocent red eyes curiously observing her. "Who are you?" Miao Bodhisattva frowned and asked. With the blessing of the Western region rules, she still couldn't see through the realm of the loli in front of her. Even the most powerful shielding magic weapon couldn't do this. Therefore, it can only mean that the other party's realm is similar to hers, or even stronger than hers. Looking at the cold eyes of Miao Bodhisattva, the silver-haired loli raised her head and said with a smile, "Yuan Luo, you should have heard of my name. New Heavenly Deo." Miao Bodhisattva's beautiful eyes flickered slightly. "Did he ask you to come?" "Yes. Otherwise how could I disturb the Bodhisattva and his loving time?" Yuan Luo smiled lightly. "You should have heard it all from him, right? If you want to ascend to heaven, you must recommunicate with the Deo. Today, the three paths of heaven, earth, and man cannot accept any cultivator to ascend to heaven, but I can." The words were gentle and persuasive, but the innocent red eyes stared at Miao Bodhisattva with sincerity. The female Bodhisattva was puzzled. After ascending to heaven, you are no longer bound by the rules of heaven and earth, nor are you controlled by the Deo of heaven. Why don't you mind the cultivators ascending to heaven? Yuan Luo walked around the bathtub with her hands behind her back, her eyes wandering on the white and delicate skin of the female Bodhisattva, and she seemed to see a lot of kiss marks on her neck, shoulders, and collarbone, and some of them even had some scratches. "That guy really doesn't know how to be gentle with women," Yuan Luo said with a smile. Miao Bodhisattva was stunned, looked at Yuan Luo's subtle eyes suspiciously, and stretched out her hand to pinch out an ice mirror out of thin air. Look down. What came into view was a beautiful face with a cold face, which looked spotless. However, looking down, it seemed that some red marks could be seen on the snow-white and delicate skin. In the brief moment of daze, she seemed to recall some scenes when she was with Musian in the house just now. For some reason, her heart could not help but ripple slightly, and she bit her red lips lightly. Although there was no pain at all, if it was not for the reminder of Xintiandeo, if the people of Nalanda temple accidentally saw that there were so many marks on her neck. Miao Bodhisattva almost had the urge to take Musian over for revenge. If Musian was present, he would definitely cry out for injustice at this moment. In his opinion, it was not his fault, but when he was intimate with this female bodhisattva before, no matter what he did, the other party had a cold attitude. Such a cold attitude in bed would naturally hurt people a little. Therefore, Musian could only do something more exciting. Miao Bodhisattva raised her hand and made a gesture, and a golden light appeared behind her, forcing her emotions to return to the original state of no desire and no desire. This is the law of the Western regions, which can deprive a person of all emotions in an instant. It is also because of this law that the monks in the Western regions practice much faster than many forces in Juzhu. After all, if you have no distractions, you will not be disturbed by the mundane world when practicing. Soon she took a shallow breath and let it out slowly. At that moment, all traces on the skin disappeared without a trace, and the delicate body was as white and translucent as ever. Noticing the smiling eyes of the lowly beside him, Miao Bodhisattva asked, "What is your relationship with him?" Yuan Luo thought for a while and smiled, "It's probably a complementary relationship. Without him, I wouldn't be born. But without me, he will have a lot of troubles in the future, even if he can go to heaven to escape at any time. Open the way to heaven." Bodhisattva Miao pursed her lips and pondered for a while, "There is something that has always been strange to me. According to what Master Mu said, he can leave Juzhu and enter the heaven at any time. In this way, he will not be affected by the way of heaven, right? In this case, wouldn't it be better if he just left Juzhu with the others? Even if the law of heaven comes, it won't be able to liquidate him in heaven, right?" Yuan Luo said calmly, "That's right, but he won't leave." "Why?" Bodhisattva Miaoi's cold beautiful eyes flickered slightly, "For the sake of the living beings in Kyushu. I don't know what he is thinking sometimes. According to the optimal solution, it is the best choice for him to go directly back to heaven to avoid the coming heaven." Yuan Luo shrugged and turned to look in the direction of Liangyi sect. "Maybe it's for the creatures of Kyushu, but maybe, it's just for one person." She quickly withdrew her gaze, turned to look at Miao Bodhisattva, and said with a smile, "We won't talk about this anymore. How are you thinking about it? Do you want to accept the resonance with me and reunite with me, or do you want to give up on it?" Bodhisattva Miao exhaled slowly and stared into Yuan Luo's eyes. "Do you think I will still make the choice to refuse? I have already practiced dual cultivation with Musian. If I regret it now, it will not be a blood loss. In fact, there is one more thing that this female bodhisattva did not say. Although she only tasted the natural furnace cauldron once, Miao Bodhisattva found that she seemed to be gradually addicted. Musian had just left not long ago, but on her side, she had already developed the desire for the spiritual energy of the furnace cauldron. Idea. If that's the case, then officially agree with me." Yuan Luo said with a smile. Miao Bodhisattva nodded slightly. At this moment, a deliberately lowered voice suddenly sounded outside the door. "Miao Bodhisattva, my master asked me to take Musian out of Nalanda temple. Are you coming to pick someone up so soon?" The female bodhisattva hummed softly, "Please step aside first, I'm about to finish my meditation." It wasn't until she heard the footsteps outside the house receding that the female bodhisattva quietly retracted her sight, stood up from the tub, and stepped out of the tub holding a white bath towel. Yuen Luo looked at the long-legged female bodhisattva and the messy clothes of the female bodhisattva that had been discarded on the ground by someone. She smiled and said nothing. Do you mind if he goes to the forbidden land of samsara? Miao Bodhisattva asked in a calm tone as if he didn't realize it. I won't be in danger, so what do I mind? Yuen Luo curled her lips. I'm different from you. I don't have any feelings for him between men and women. The candle on the table was burning quietly, and the light was dim. After being silent for a long time, the female bodhisattva said, I will first bring him to the maid in the forbidden land of reincarnation. After that, I will complete the resonance with you. Yao Meng, who was sitting in front of the windowsill and reading The Way to Control a Husband, turned his head and glanced out the window. Under the dim sky, it seems that two figures can be vaguely seen riding a phoenix chariot, heading towards the forbidden land of reincarnation deep in the north of the western region. Yao Meng's beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but frown slightly, and she sighed quietly, although I know that he wants to control more taboo places, but personally sending his man to other women's beds, the mood is really complicated. The former Qing emperor could be said to have swept across the fish pond and turned countless protagonists into the green. Bai Ruoxi and others even planted the seeds of revenge in their hearts. They swore that in 30 years from Hedong to 30 years from Hexi, they would definitely look for Qing emperor in the future. Revenge. However, ever since that time when she personally sent her beloved husband to the Yao Wang's bed, Yao Meng seemed to have awakened some strange interests. Although it is not as outrageous as his disciple Ye Qian, this hobby is not a good one after all. Could this be spreading from person to person? Fairy King Gli sighed softly in her heart, and then glanced at Wei Mengru who was sitting on the sofa, holding her forehead as if thinking about something. What's wrong with you? Yao Meng asked. The fusion of Wei Mengru and the original witch means that her past memories left in the original witch's body will gradually awaken, and Wei Mengru is obviously in such a memory awakening stage at this moment. But Yao Meng always felt that something was not right about the expression on Wei Mengru's face. Yao Meng walked to the couch and sat down, her beautiful body wrapped in green gauze. There was a trace of doubt in her beautiful eyes. Did you remember something? You can almost see the change in Wei Mengru's expression visibly. She turned to look at the fairy sitting next to her. After a moment of silence, she said softly, according to the memory I recalled not long ago, the bad luck on my body is not the bad luck left by the punishment of heaven. My misfortune is different from those who were punished by heaven in Kyushu in the past. If you seriously violate the rules of heaven and earth, you will be punished by heaven and become an extremely unlucky person. Musian is aware of this matter, and so is Yao Meng. However, at this moment, she heard a different answer from Wei Mengru. Yao Meng's beautiful eyes changed slightly. What do you mean? Your bad luck is not a punishment from heaven. Where did it come from? Now you and I both know that the way of heaven has acquired humanity. The so-called people have both positive and negative emotions. A complex look appeared on Wei Mengru's face. The bad luck in my body is the bad luck caused by the overwhelming negative emotions of heaven. This is how the body of doom was born. No wonder that in the past, even the spirit dragon, a symbol of luck, could not change Wei Mengru's bad luck. If it was the condensed negative emotions of Tiandao, it would not be surprising that the spirit dragon could not purify it. Yao Meng was a little puzzled. Anyway, with the blessing of the great luck of several chosen people, your bad luck has been completely eliminated. Isn't this a good thing? Why do you still look a little worried? Wei Mengru whispered, in the memories I recalled, I learned one thing. Her eyes dimmed slightly. The misfortune of the body of misfortune will never disappear because of the great luck. No matter how huge the great luck is, it is impossible to erase the bad luck left by heaven. My bad luck is just transferred from one person to another. Boom. The explosive amount of information caused Yao Meng's eyes to slowly widen, her red lips slightly opened, and she looked at Wei Mengru's face in surprise. Underneath her beautiful face was an expression of incredible surprise. The personal interface of the young master was something I owned in the past, so I can also absorb the great luck he received from the Chosen One. Wei Mengru continued, but the body of misfortune is like a glass of water that is full. After the great luck is injected, the misfortune overflows, but it only overflows. It does not disappear, but is absorbed by others. This is also the information she just learned from her memory. Yao Meng fell into silence for a long time, his eyes flickering slightly. If what Wei Mengru said is true, it means. After Wei Mengru's bad luck overflowed, the bad luck actually did not disappear, but was absorbed. Someone took the place of Wei Mengru and shouldered the misfortune left by Tiandao, paving the way for Wei Mengru. But now the bad luck has been completely transferred. No need to ask for razor blades in the new month, just vote for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 633. At this moment, located on the north side of the forbidden land of reincarnation, the first-generation Lord of Reincarnation is sitting cross-legged, eyes closed silently, and is in a state of meditation. The Lord of Reincarnation and his unfilial disciple Ni Yan both control half of today's taboo rules, so no one can do anything about the other. That's why Ni Yan hopes to start with Musian and find a way to break the deadlock. For this reason, they even did not hesitate to cooperate with people from the immortal Forbidden Land. However, I am afraid that Ni Yan would not have thought that another disciple whom the Lord of Reincarnation had previously accepted would have such a close relationship with Musian. The Lord of Reincarnation slowly opened his eyes and looked at the girl in black dress who had just entered the palace with a smile. Is Musian here? Huang Manting smiled and said, Master's guess was indeed accurate. Ni Yan couldn't help but send someone to secretly bring Mr. Mu to the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation. She probably wanted to break the deadlock as soon as possible and ascend through the natural furnace cauldron. The Lord of Reincarnation smiled and stroked his beard and said, She is my disciple after all. I naturally know exactly what she is thinking. This time, while she and Musian are practicing together, I will arrange an assessment for you in the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation. As long as you control even a few more taboo rules than Ni Yan, the situation will be reversed in the future. Huang Manting smiled and nodded gently, I know what to do. As if she thought of something again, she opened her mouth. But master. Before he finished speaking, the Lord of Samsara suddenly raised his hand to signal Huang Manting to be silent. The old man's cloudy eyes flashed with uncertainty, and he felt like his brain had a splitting headache. Some memories that have been worn away in the past seem to be gradually coming to mind. Natural furnace cauldrons are actually rare in Kyushu, but they are not completely absent. But the natural furnace cauldron that can continuously evolve is only Musian's family. Otherwise, the major taboo places would not have tried their best to get Musian and use him to ascend. However, neither Nian nor Isis from the immortal forbidden area would have thought that Ye Lingxian from the Dongzhou forbidden area could completely control the taboo rules, and he did so with the help of Musian. At this moment, when Ni Yan ordered Musian to be brought into the palace and was preparing to retreat to ascend with the help of the natural furnace cauldron, she never expected that Huang Manting would take this opportunity to conduct a taboo assessment. Deep in the forbidden land of reincarnation, in an ancient palace, a female supreme in gorgeous robes was leaning in front of the throne, looking down at the young man who had just been escorted over by a maid. Mr. Mu, it's really difficult to invite you over, Ni Yan said with a smile. There was a hint of frivolity in his words, as if he was looking down at an ant with an arrogant expression. She can treat any creature in Kyushu calmly, but only when facing this little monk who has repeatedly frustrated the Forbidden Land. Yan can't help but feel angry. Even if you don't know what happened to her avatar after she went to the Dakian dynasty, you know without thinking that it must be related to Musian. The only person in the world who can ask the Ascension Realm to protect him is Musian. I'm quite surprised. I didn't expect that Senior would come up with such a cheap trick as kidnapping. What exactly do you want to do? Musian's hands were tightly bound by handcuffs. His face was calm, but there was a trace of panic in his eyes, as if he didn't expect to be kidnapped here. I'm asking you now. Seeing the young man's expression, Yan smiled contemptuously and raised her hand to signal the attendant to let go of him. At the same time, he stood up from the throne and walked down the steps step by step with graceful steps. The red and white intertwined dress dragged on the ground, with a whirlpool-like halo of light slowly turning under her feet. She stepped on a pair of embroidered shoes that highlighted the snow-white insteps and came to Musian. She lifted Musian's chin with the instep of her foot, with a hint of cold teasing in her eyes. Musian, haven't you figured out your current situation yet? No one knows that you are in the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation. You are just a prisoner, not the Musian who controls the wind and rain in Kyushu. I could kill you right now if I wanted to. Musian's expression changed slightly. Aren't you afraid that others will take revenge on the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation if they find out? After hearing this, Yan just retracted her feet, walked slowly around Musian, looked at his gloomy face, and chuckled. There are two lords of Samsara in the Forbidden Land of Samsara. If Qing Emperor He Gongryo knew that you were caught in the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation and took revenge, do you think the teacher will see the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation destroyed? Hearing this, Musian looked at the woman with fear. Do you want to reap the benefits and use Qing Emperor and Gong Lianyu to get rid of the first-generation Lord of Reincarnation? However, the only people who will catch me are female supremes. They cannot be deceived by you. Once they know that I am in the Forbidden Land of Reincarnation, they will never let you go. Let me go if you know what I'm doing. When the time comes. Before Musian finished speaking, Yan had already raised her index finger and said with a shhh, and said with a sweet smile, even if it is exposed by then, won't ISIS still be there? Those who cooperate with the national destiny and the Western region are the immortal masters. What does it have to do with me? But even though I invited Mr. Mew to be my guest, I actually don't plan to ascend to heaven so soon. After all, after the heavenly Dao descends, it will definitely not allow anyone in the Yuhua realm to stay alive in Juzhu. Yan seems to know more than I thought. Musian frowned slightly and said calmly, the Dagon dynasty has not collapsed, your plan has failed, and the heavenly Dao cannot descend. It seems that you know very little about the heavenly Dao. Yan showed a charming smile. She sat next to Musian, her sexy body leaning against Musian's arms. There are two ways for the heavenly Dao to descend. One is that after the dynasty is destroyed, the heavenly Dao uses the rules of heaven and earth to officially descend to Juzhu. There is another way, when someone seriously violates the rules of heaven and earth, it can directly descend to Juzhu and correct this world. While speaking, Yan's slender jade hand has been along Musian's face, passed by and gently stroked his thigh. Before, the heavenly Dao could not descend because someone blocked the secrets of the heavenly Dao, so he did not realize that so many things had happened in Juzhu. In the past, he would control Juzhu through the will of the heavenly Dao, but for some reason, the will of the heavenly Dao did not seem to tell him about Juzhu recently. She gently exhaled a sweet breath in Musian's ear. Mr. Mew, I heard that you accept all beauties as long as they come. Now is a good time for romance. Instead of talking about these things, why not indulge yourself first? However, Musian was contemplating Yan's words just now, and his mind moved slightly. Did you invite the heavenly Dao to descend? who knew that when Yan heard this, her expression became much gloomier, and the gentle expression on her face also restrained a little. Although Musian's words were unintentional questions, it can be said that they hit her sore spot. As early as when the Green Emperor ascended to heaven, the Forbidden Land had thought of inviting the heavenly Dao to descend and correct the balance of Jizhu. However, the secrets of heaven were blocked by people, and they could not pass any information about Jizhu to the heavenly Dao. It was not me who asked the heavenly Dao to come, nor was it other forbidden places. Yan said with a smile, "Didn't you notice? The secrets of heaven that had been blocking the entire Jizhu in the past are now declining. This means that the people who once secretly blocked the secrets of heaven are now very weak. I was a little stuck yesterday, and I will make up a chapter later." So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 634. People who shield the secrets of heaven are very weak. Musian repeated it softly. He raised his head and looked at Yan. The decline of Taoism that shields Tianji means that the person's power is declining. What if? The current Lord of Reincarnation put his hand on Musian's thigh, carelessly caressed his green fingertips along Musian's thigh, and blew a sweet scent into his ear with a cooing voice. "Do you think there is no need to pay for shielding Tianji? Shield the secrets of heaven and deduce the secrets of heaven. The former violates the rules of heaven and earth and will be contaminated with the unknown, while the latter involves the cycle of cause and effect. Under normal circumstances, a powerful person who is a little more life-saving will not take the initiative to touch the two. After all, even if a powerful power is contaminated with the unknown and cause and effect, there is a high possibility of backlash. From the tone of your voice, do you know the person who shielded Tianji?" Yan looked at him with a smile. "I advise you to stay away from that person as soon as possible. Once contaminated with unknown cause and effect, those who come into contact with that person will not end well." Yan's tone was more sincere. "Musian, you are a rare genius. I have heard about your deeds. It's no wonder that peerless fairies like Qing Emperor would fall in love with you. Your appearance, talent, and even the natural furnace cauldron is destined to attract the favor of monks of the opposite sex. I also heard that you seem to like girls who already have a Taoist partner. Do you like the pleasure of fighting for love?" Musian came back to his senses and frowned. "Where did you hear these strange things?" "It's just hearsay," Yan said with a smile, "but if you like that feeling, you can try to take me away from heaven." Musian glanced at her without any trace. "I don't understand what you are talking about. Are you not understanding, or are you pretending not to understand?" A faint smile hung on Yan's mature and charming face, and her voice was so seductive. "The 9 taboo places were originally created by heaven. It can be said that the lords of the taboos are all children of heaven. Although I am not the first taboo lord in the forbidden land of reincarnation, if the law of heaven comes, I will still obey the law of heaven. You already know this, right?" Musian. "So." Yan's slender hand stopped at a certain point, and her fingertips drew circles on his thigh. She raised her head, her delicate and arrogant pretty face flushed red, and her eyes seemed to be dancing with charming eyes. "Come and subdue me, Musian. If you succeed, I will let you go. But if you fail, then become my slave." Musian raised his eyebrows slightly. "Why do you talk so much to a prisoner like me? Isn't it up to you to decide what I want to do now?" When he finished speaking, he shook the shackles in his hands with a hint of mockery in his tone. There was a playful smile in Yan's beautiful eyes. "I have said, you are a rare genius. Rather than forcing me to practice dual cultivation with you, I hope that you and I can establish an emotional foundation. After the great liquidation, the feathers of Kyushu will no longer exist, and you will have no backing. But I can be your support. As long as you surrender to me, everything I have will be yours. Similarly, I will also try my best to plead with heaven for you and spare your life." Musian lowered his eyes slightly. What a generous proposal. I have to say that this is indeed a very generous offer. So much so that when most people hear such a proposal, they will most likely be moved. Yan smiled slightly, with a bit of arrogance in her voice. You may think I am lying to you, but do you really think that the creatures in this world can resist the way of heaven? King Di and others can't fight against the way of heaven. The best way they can find to break the situation is to leave Kyushu and ascend to the immortal world. But they can't take you to the fairy world, so you have no choice. Either surrender or die. The smile is still so beautiful, but it exudes a dangerous atmosphere. In fact, even if Musian refuses now, Yan will not kill him. After all, among the 9 taboo places now, except for a few male supremes, the other 4 taboo places want Musian so that they can practice together with him and absorb spiritual energy. Nyan is naturally no exception. She was reluctant to kill Musian. After all, she didn't need to do this, she had a way to make Musian surrender to her. Actually, I can't think of a reason for your refusal. Yan was seductive in his ear, and whispered in a seductive tone, although I will call you a slave in the future, in private, you will become my husband, no matter how you want to retaliate against me in the future. This despicable body, whatever you want, I will satisfy you. And after the great liquidation of Heavenly Dao is over in the future, the Forbidden Land will regain control of Kyushu. You can get any girl you want. There will be no objections and no one will criticize your behavior. The Qing Emperor is very beautiful, but who can guarantee that such a great beauty will not appear again in thousands of years? At that time, the entire Forbidden Land of Reincarnation will become your harem. You can do whatever you want to any woman in Kyushu every day, no matter whether she is a girl or a wife, no one dares to object to you. Because by then, the power of the rules of the Reincarnation Forbidden Land will cover the entire Kyushu. Full of tempting propositions, the sweet fragrance gently spitting on the face, and the warm and soft touch of the delicate body next to the body. The atmosphere is so ambiguous. However, Yan's eyes were no longer on Musian's face, but she lowered her eyes slightly, with a smile flowing in her beautiful eyes. Haha, even though he is quite young, he has quite a lot of money. Nyan held up Musian's face and put her pretty red lips close to his ear. There was a sweet and charming tone in her voice. Don't keep your head down and look into my eyes, okay? At this moment, the two people's eyes locked together. And almost at that moment, Musian's soul seemed to tremble slightly. From now on, you will practice double cultivation with me until you kneel down, kiss my toes, and swear to the avenue to become my slave. The moment Yan finished her words, the taboo object in her hand seemed to turn into a huge light shield, enveloping the two of them. Musian was surprised and said, "Forbidden thing." He had heard Muji say that once used, it would make a person do one thing over and over again until the owner of the forbidden object was satisfied. Are you so ignorant of martial ethics? Or are you so unsure of your own charm? Musian suddenly raised his head and looked at Yan. However, Yan turned a deaf ear, and her beautiful eyes, as clear as sky blue, seemed to be dyed with a charming red at this time. The gloss of her red lips became increasingly bright and attractive, and her red and white dress fluttered in the quietly blowing cold wind. At this time, even if Musian wanted to run, it was too late. Because when the forbidden object of reincarnation was activated, this forbidden object merged with Yan, and strange swirling lines flowed in her charming red eyes. She smiled and said softly, "The forbidden thing is reincarnation." Suddenly, the whole space was spinning. Musian suddenly raised his head. He clearly felt that the space had changed just now, but when he glanced around now, he found that he was still in the palace just now, and nothing had changed. Is it my imagination? No, that forbidden thing must have taken effect. Musian felt a little more wary. What are you looking for? Can you tell me about it? Nyan's voice sounded across from Musian. She gazed tenderly into Musian's eyes, perfectly displaying the taboo of reincarnation in Musian's field of vision. Showing a gem-like clear blue. This is the true face of the forbidden thing about reincarnation. A pair of eyes. Those are a pair of eyes that make people obsessed with them just when they look at them for the first time. They are extremely charming. It seems to exude a charming atmosphere that can make people fall. Musian's heart skipped a beat. But at this time, the 9 foxtails behind him slowly unfolded like a peacock spreading its tail, resisting the fatal charm brought by those eyes. Yan's beautiful eyes were full of anticipation, as if she saw something. But she just stared at Musian tenderly and said in a soft and sweet voice, "You don't have to resist my charm. You just need to indulge yourself. Forget everything, and then, swear to the great road and surrender to me. In this way, no matter what you want, I can satisfy you and avoid unnecessary pain, right?" Is this the charm of forbidden things? Musian's heart fluttered, but with the blessing of his natural charm, he still maintained his will and firmly refused. "I refuse." For a moment, Musian seemed to see a hint of coldness in Yan's eyes. "Why? Do you think the conditions I just offered are not sincere enough?" She walked to Musian's side, her voice still gentle. "After the coming of heaven, many living beings will die. Now there are more than 5 taboo lords who want to kill you. Without my protection, you will die. Very miserable." First, he tried to make Musian feel a sense of crisis. Then, the owner of the forbidden land of reincarnation suddenly changed his voice, "But follow me, and no one will dare to attack you." And Yan reached out and grabbed one of Musian's wrists, held Musian's hand and placed it on her beautiful face. She lightly opened her red lips and said, "I will also be yours. I will help you with the relationship. The resonance of heaven allows you to advance to the realm of harmony. If you are willing, I can also give you the elixir from the forbidden land of reincarnation in the future. I can swear to Deo on this. Actually, your heart is beating, right? I can feel your heartbeat speeding up." Musian's heartbeat was indeed speeding up. But that's not because of the conditions set by Yan, but because the forbidden items of reincarnation are taking effect. "If you give in early, I will give you the supreme happiness." Yan gently bit Musian's ear, and her voice was emotional and gentle, "So when you and I are practicing, you should think about it again. When it's over, remember to give me a reply." Diamond sued. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 635. Yan slowly exhaled a sweet breath. Her beautiful eyes were half closed, and she licked her beautiful red lips as if she had some unfinished thoughts, feeling the spiritual energy of the natural furnace flowing through her body. Although I have heard about the function of the natural furnace cauldron before, the feeling of experiencing it myself and hearing about it are completely different. She looked at the young man whose hands were shackled with a smile on her face and asked with a smile, "Musian, how are you thinking about it? I'll give you 2 choices. Do you want to accept me and surrender to me? Or, do you want to suffer more?" Musian smiled. "It sounds like the options are different, but the final result is the same. It seems that I have no choice." Yan smiled back, "Actually, I can't think of any reason for you to reject me. After the coming of heaven, all the confidant around you will cease to exist, and even you may be wiped out in the great liquidation. Instead of doing this, why not become a forbidden creature and become my slave from now on, or in other words, husband?" It can be seen that the words of this taboo lord are indeed full of sincerity, but the slender hands are caressing his body as if nothing has happened, as if a veil is caressing it, which makes people feel itchy. Musian did not answer directly, but asked in a very tactful tone, "Can I ask you a question?" Yan narrowed her eyes, "Say. Do you think your beauty can match that of Qing Emperor?" Yan fell into a brief silence. "Then do you think your breasts are as big as the master of the Sword Palace?" Can you be younger than the queen of the Forbidden Zone? Are you naive and simple? Or do you think your temperament is better than my senior sister Lan? It seems, except that you have a longer lifespan, you don't seem to have any advantages. There is no doubt that the beauty of this Lord of Reincarnation is absolutely excellent, and he can also be called a beauty. However, the people mentioned by Musian have advantages that Nian does not have. Her breasts are not as big as Biruoxi's, and her beauty is not as good as Kingdi's. As for longevity, long life doesn't seem to be an advantage. As for innocence and simplicity, who has cultivated to the level of unity and power, who can still maintain an innocent heart, innocence and simplicity? If anything, this Lord of Reincarnation actually has advantages that other women don't have. For example, her appearance is that of an iconic exotic beauty. However, Nian obviously did not think of this at this moment. Every question Musian asked seemed to make Nian's face darker. But soon afterwards, an intriguing smile appeared on Nian's lips. She suddenly stood on tiptoes and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear clearly, "Although you seem to have a disdainful look, you are still reacted to me. Next, you will have countless opportunities to regret it, provided your energy can sustain it until then." Everything in the entire palace seemed to have changed quietly. Musian didn't even have time to think about what happened when he immediately heard a soft and sweet voice coming from behind him. "What are you looking for? Can you tell me?" Musian was stunned, and subconsciously turned his head to look in the direction of the woman's mouth. Nian was standing in front of the palace, her beautiful blue eyes full of tenderness. It's a taboo thing, reincarnation. And this scene seemed familiar, he had just experienced it once not long ago. "It seems that I have fallen into the illusion of reincarnation," Musian whispered to himself subconsciously. He could clearly realize that he seemed to be experiencing the same thing as before. Dual cultivation with Nian, and then Nian asked Musian to surrender to her. After Musian refuses, reincarnation will reset everything. Until Musian swore to Deo and became Nian's slave. Musian frowned. It seems that this forbidden thing seems to be a bit troublesome. Of course, it's just a look. At least, Musian still has a magic weapon that can unlock this reincarnation. But there is no need to do so for the time being. Nian thought that Musian was completely under her control and could only be manipulated by others. She could even take this opportunity to absorb more of the spiritual energy of the natural furnace. However, she probably would not have thought that when she was absorbing the spiritual energy of the natural furnace cauldron. At this moment in the forbidden land of reincarnation, a taboo assessment surrounding Huang Manting was quietly going on. Half a day later, a charming smile appeared on Nian's fair face. She looked at the gasping boy lying on the ground and said with a charming smile, "Mr. Mu, haven't you thought about it yet?" She was wearing a white gauze dress, and her beautiful eyes showed a seductive look, which was full of temptation. Even at such a close distance at this moment, it seemed that even the white gauze dress wrapping her body became quite tempting. Although reincarnation will allow a person to experience the same thing over and over until the master's wish is fulfilled, but if you die due to energy exhaustion before then, the reincarnation will be automatically terminated. Nian's delicate and arrogant pretty face turned red, and her beautiful eyes stared seductively into Musian's eyes. "If you don't make a decision quickly, maybe you will become the first enlightened monk to die of exhaustion." Woolen cloth. When she said this, she raised her hand and snapped her fingers. The handcuffs that originally restrained Musian were broken. After reincarnation takes effect, it doesn't matter whether you have these handcuffs or not. Even if Musian escapes to the ends of the earth, he will eventually appear in the space created by reincarnation. Musian gasped softly, looking a little weak, and frowned. "I said, no matter what, I will never give in to you." Such a person who would rather die than surrender. Nian raised her lips slightly, "Then let us look forward to Mr. Mu's next performance." From the past to the present, She has never seen a person who has been subject to the taboo of reincarnation who was not obedient and surrendered in the end. Can a monk who has just gained enlightenment be able to change his destiny against the will of heaven? What a pity. Then please, Mr. Mu, please continue to give me your natural furnace cauldron spiritual energy. Nyan said with a smile. She looked at Musian's body, her beautiful eyes made people's hearts itch. Judging from your current energy and the aura of the furnace, you probably won't be able to hold on for another 2 hours. Don't think about doing any tricks in your natural furnace. I know you are naturally charming, but reincarnation will cut off the charming aura you gave me. This is the reason why Nyan can be so confident in dual cultivation with Musian and rashly absorb his spiritual energy. If Musian does some tricks in her natural furnace, she might even be charmed by the nine-tailed fox. After all, Musian is now a natural in the ascension realm. And this feathered furnace aura is directly injected into Yan's body, and its charm effect will be several times more powerful than using the charm technique directly. But the taboo of reincarnation can limit Musian's charming body. Even if he absorbs Musian's spiritual energy until he is exhausted, he will not be able to make any small moves in the natural furnace. Nyan reached out and held Musian's neck, staring at him with charming eyes. Come on, Musian, please me as much as you want and give me all your spiritual energy. No matter how much furnace spiritual energy you have, I will bear it. Musian looked at the shackles that had fallen off his wrists, and then looked up at the stunning beauty in front of him, with panic in his eyes. No. I don't want to do those things anymore. If I continue like this, my body will be damaged, it won't hold up. Then as long as you agree to become my slave, wouldn't it be fine? There was a hint of persuasion in Yan's tone, and she said with a smile, as long as you kneel down and swear to the road to become my slave, all this will be over. Musian immediately moved his eyes away. No. I won't agree. Then I can only regretfully ask Mr. Mu to continue to consume his energy. I will squeeze your body until you pass out, and then wait for you to wake up and continue to repeat it until I emerge and ascend. Yan raised her eyebrows looking at him with a calm smile on his face. Master Mu, please come quickly. I miss you so much. There was a hint of temptation in her tone, but the way she looked at Musian was like looking at a lowly slave. Okay. Suddenly, Musian raised his head, grabbed Yan's wrist, raised his hand and pressed her against the corner of the wall. Yan didn't react at first, thinking that the young man had given up on himself, until she saw that Musian's body seemed to be emitting fire like a phoenix. Her face stiffened slightly, and she hesitated and said, Tian Huang Kung Fu. She did not expect that a monk from Dongzhou would actually practice the heavenly phoenix technique of the first demon emperor in the demon world. Moreover, Mu Jian was clearly under the control of reincarnation, but she vaguely felt that something was not right. No. Have you released the control of reincarnation? Yan suddenly reacted, raised her head and said in disbelief. I don't know when it started, but under Musian's feet, a ruler emitting clear light was inserted into the floor, just in time to completely suppress the light of reincarnation back into its body. But even so, a mere enlightenment monk is no match for me. A beautiful note suddenly floated out of her mouth involuntarily, and the spiritual energy in her entire body seemed to be drained. Whenever she wanted to condense the spiritual energy from the natural furnace was poured into Nyan along with the charming breath. In his body, Yan's spellcasting action was abruptly interrupted. After finally finding an opportunity, Yan glared at Musian angrily. Musian, you keep talking, bad women will be punished with a stick. While Yan was still fighting with Musian, at this moment, a continuous ladder appeared on the sky in the forbidden land of Samsara. At the end of the ladder, a woman wearing fairy gold armor looked down at the creatures in the forbidden land, as well as the taboo assessor Huang Manting who was climbing up the ladder. The taboo of the will of heaven stared at Huang Manting with cold eyes. His eyes were extremely indifferent. In fact, she was looking at the natural furnace aura in Huang Manting's body with envy. After watching for a while, the forbidden gaze glanced towards a certain palace in the forbidden land of reincarnation. Taboo's cold eyes seemed to be flashing with human-like envy and jealousy. Woohoo, I really want to practice dual cultivation with my master. It's a pity that she can't just come to Kyushu. When I come to Kyushu next time, I must make up for it severely. At the same time, Ni Yan's personal maid saw Huang Manting who was being tested, and her face changed. She realized the purpose of the Lord of Samsara, so she turned around and headed towards the palace. Master, something bad has happened. However, when the maid hurried into the palace with her skirt lifted, she only saw a light ball emitting soft light in the center of the palace, which was as big as a small house. From the surface of the light ball, nothing can be seen inside. This is the true appearance of the forbidden object samsara. From the outside, it looks like a glass bead. After it is sacrificed, it will become a pair of eyes of the master and form a unique space. From the outside, you can't see what is happening inside, but from the inside, you can see everything in the outside world at a glance. What do you want? At this time, Ni Yan's slightly intermittent voice came from the light ball. Master, something bad has happened. The disciple brought by the Lord of Samsara is taking part in the taboo assessment today. If she passes more levels than you, the situation may be. The maid was interrupted by Ni Yan before she finished her words. No, it's okay, it's not important anymore. The maid was stunned for a moment, hesitantly observing the light ball in front of her, and said, Are you okay? Is there something wrong with your practice? Ni Yan gently exhaled a sweet breath, hesitating. I'm fine, I'm just practicing meditation and now I'm moving my body, I'm really fine. You can leave, she said indifferently. Yes. Listening to the footsteps of the maid going away, the female supreme turned her head to look at the boy with a pair of fox ears behind her, with a touch of emotional luster flowing in her beautiful eyes. She suddenly felt that the way of heaven didn't seem to be so important. The child in front of her could give her the pleasure of ascension that no one else could give her. Time passed silently. Until at a certain moment, a girl's sweet voice came from outside the palace gate. Ni Yan, if you want to live, let her go. When the voice fell, Huang Manting walked into the palace in her small embroidered shoes. When she saw the young man who had already dressed and sat in front of the throne in the hall, Huang Manting couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and then quickly reacted and walked up to Musian. Where is Ni Yan? Did she stop me from taking the taboo assessment? Musian came back to his senses and said with mixed feelings, this is a long story. Huang Manting's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt, and then she quickly said, forget it, no matter what, you leave here first, and Ni Yan will be handed over to me and master next dash. Before she finished her words, she saw a woman walking out from behind the throne. The woman had her hair loose and was staring at Musian affectionately. The black light pattern under her feet, which was spinning like a vortex, had announced the name of its owner. The owner of the reincarnation forbidden land, Ni Yan. Huang Manting opened her mouth slightly, looking at the blush on the woman's delicate face and the misty and obsessed look when she looked at Musian. After a brief moment of surprise, her mind seemed to short-circuit, and then a confused doubt slowly emerged. What's going on? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 636. Huang Manting thought that she would be hindered in every way when accepting the taboo assessment. She also thought that even after inheriting the power of the rules of the forbidden land of reincarnation, she would still have a final battle with Ni Yan. Many scenes had been rehearsed in her mind countless times during the past few days when she returned to the forbidden land of reincarnation, but this scene in front of her was beyond her imagination. What's going on? Shouldn't Musian be controlled by Yan? Why do these two seem so harmonious right now? It was almost as if they had never had any fight and had known each other for a long time. After a brief daze, Huang Manting hesitated and said, "Am I here early?" Looking at Nyan's appearance at the moment, it was obvious that she had just finished her work not long ago and was still immersed in the afterglow of the recent past. Musian obviously guessed what Huang Manting was referring to, and without wasting any time, he said with a smile, "You came at the right time. Yan has already sworn to Dao that she will never compete with you for the position of the Lord of Reincarnation." Huang Manting glanced at Musian suspiciously, couldn't help but narrowed her eyes, and said through a message, "Mr. Mu, what exactly did you do to Yan?" "I just communicated with her normally. In fact, I didn't have much hope at the beginning, but I didn't expect that the Lord of Reincarnation was much more enlightened than I thought." Musian showed a gentle smile. After negotiating with her not long ago, she promised to give up the position of the Lord of Reincarnation in the future. In fact, Musian didn't really have much hope at the beginning, he just wanted to see if he could charm Nyan. Facts have proved that the charm technique at the enlightenment level is not that effective for a taboo lord. But the temptation brought by the natural furnace in the ascension realm was much more exaggerated than Musian imagined. Of course, a large part of the reason is also because Yan herself is not strong-willed, and she does not have much loyalty to the way of heaven. In the final analysis, Yan is not a child conceived by heaven, but a latecomer who later inherited the forbidden land of reincarnation. Huang Manting's eyes lingered on the exotic woman beside Musian without any trace, her eyes were quite meaningful. "What are your plans next?" she asked. "If possible, I will wait until you inherit the position of Lord of Reincarnation before leaving." As soon as Musian finished speaking, Huang Manting's eyes lit up slightly. "Of course, we can only stay for 3 more days at most," Musian added. Huang Manting flashed her seductive eyes and said softly, "What a pity. I was still thinking that if this was the case, I would delay my appointment for a few days." There was indeed regret in his voice. Musian smiled, stretched out his hand to hold Huang Manting's little hand, and said softly, "When the matter of Tiandao is resolved, don't we still have a lot of time to do it? In that case, why rush this moment?" Huang Manting narrowed her eyes and chuckled, "That's right." The conversation between the two gave people the impression that in order to achieve her own goals, the heroine had no choice but to commit herself to another man even though she already had a husband. "Why do I feel like I am drifting further and further away from my own green tea journey?" Musian sighed inwardly. Then he quickly calmed down his thoughts and said seriously, "I'm staying here these few days. In addition to your affairs, there is one more thing I need to ask you for help with." Musian stared into Huang Manting's eyes and mouthed something. "Is that the letter that Master left behind that recorded his life history?" Huang Manting knew it in her heart, but she just said in a regretful tone, "I'm sorry, I couldn't find the follow-up content." "Master didn't know where he hid it?" "His memory is severely damaged. When I asked him about the mysterious man's suppression of the Forbidden Land in the past, he seemed to not remember many details. If a person's memory is compared to a water bottle, some people can hold 300 milliliters, while others can hold 500, or even 1,000 or 10,000. And a being like the Lord of Taboo can naturally store many, many more memories than a mortal in the world of mortals. However, due to the shielding of heaven and earth, even the memory of the Lord of Taboo has also experienced deviations or even wear and tear, and some things will be forgotten subconsciously. Because of this, the Lord of Reincarnation recorded some of the things he remembered and sealed them through Buddhist inscriptions to resist the secrets and wear and tear of the shield. Master Mu, don't you believe me?" Seeing that Musian didn't say a word, Huang Manting thought that Musian was suspecting that she had hidden the remaining records on purpose, so she couldn't help but take one of his arms and said softly, "Although I hope you can stay with me, but I wouldn't lie to you about such an important matter. Musian was silent. This matter may involve the secret of Tiandao's past. Huang Manting is not the kind of person to act on impulse. In other words, maybe he has to wait in the forbidden land of reincarnation for a while until he finds that record. Just as I was thinking of this, Yan's soft and melodious voice suddenly came from behind. Are you talking about the diary my master left before leaving the forbidden land of reincarnation? Musian was stunned for a moment, then subconsciously looked back at Yan. Do you know where it is hidden? Not only do I know it, I have already read it, but it is full of Buddhist inscriptions, so I don't know what is written yet. Under Musian's gaze, she raised her hand and grabbed it in space. The light filled the air, and Yan grabbed a folded piece of letter paper from the space. No wonder I haven't found it after searching for so long. It turns out it has fallen into your hands. Huang Manting said with a smile, what conditions are you going to put forward? Do you want me to withdraw from the forbidden land of reincarnation, or, let Mr. Mu do something for you? Faced with this junior's provocation, Yan just glanced at him slightly, and then looked at Musian with sparkling eyes. I have no interest in the forbidden land of reincarnation anymore. After all, since inheriting the position of Lord of Reincarnation, she has gradually forgotten why she wanted to become the Lord of Taboo in the first place. The previous dual cultivation between Musian and her reminded her of her original intention. It's not to become the Lord of Taboo, nor to ascend. I just simply want to make my monk life more interesting. Dual cultivation with Musian is very interesting. But the suggestion you just made is a good one. Nyan walked up to Musian with her skirt in hand and said with a smile, I'll just use it in exchange for more of Mr. Mu's love, is that okay? Musian shook his head gently, no. Yan was stunned for a moment. Even without this, I will still love you, Musian whispered. A qualified Neptune must know how to insert the fish's body correctly at the right time. Yan is now just intoxicated by the charming spiritual energy of his natural cauldron. Although when she received the spiritual energy just now, she suppressed the pleasure and swore on the road intermittently. But rather than subduing Yan as a person, it is naturally better to subdue both body and mind. As expected, Yan's eyes flashed with water, and her heartbeat seemed to speed up. But after noticing Huang Manting's presence, her face quickly returned to its original posture. This Lord of Reincarnation is much easier to defeat than I thought. Is it because it hasn't been too long since I became the Lord of Taboos? Mu Jian complained in his heart and said with a smile, I need to go to Nalando Temple. Nyan is not your enemy now, so. He looked at Huang Manting intentionally or unintentionally. Huang Manting rolled her eyes at him. In your eyes, do I seem like someone who doesn't know how to take the overall situation into consideration? It's more than just a resemblance, it's basically, Mu Jian complained in his heart. He still vaguely remembered seeing Huang Manting's trembling side when they first met at the Chenexai Chamber of Commerce. The bad girl even thought about letting him become her. The minister under the skirt. But at this juncture, she should not have another conflict with Yan. After temporarily leaving the forbidden land of reincarnation, Musian quickly returned to Nalando Temple with the help of Yan. Entering the temple, under an ancient tree, I saw the mature and charming Miao Bodhisattva. She was sitting cross-legged on a lotus, her eyes were slightly closed, and a little cinnabar between her eyebrows made her already beautiful face even more difficult to see. The majesty of proximity. Miao Bodhisattva did not open his eyes, but said calmly, you came back much faster than I thought. Musian said bluntly, I have obtained the second record left by the Lord of Reincarnation, and I need the help of the Bodhisattva. Only the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the Western regions can decipher Buddhist texts. Miao Bodhisattva did not answer, but said in a cold and pleasant voice, unraveling that Buddhist inscription also involves cause and effect, because the content written on this letter is not simple. Although I can unravel it, I can't solve it continuously in such a short period of time. Deciphering this kind of Buddhist text will also cause some luck to backfire. What are you doing? Miao Bodhisattva opened his eyes suddenly and frowned slightly. This boy was unbuttoning his belt in front of her. Wouldn't a bodhisattva be subject to backlash? Practicing together with me can alleviate the fate of the backlash, Muzian explained seriously. You can clearly see two groups of shy red clouds appearing on the originally indifferent face of this all-powerful bodhisattva from the western regions. It's not the first time for bodhisattva to practice dual cultivation with me. Why are you so shy? Muzian secretly complained. Bodhisattva Miao spoke in as calm a tone as possible. You, give me the letter paper. Muzian couldn't help but smile, handed the letter to the female bodhisattva, and then sat next to the lotus waiting for her to unlock the Buddhist seal. Seriously, do you really not need dual cultivation? I don't mind sacrificing. Muzian looked at her slightly red face and couldn't help but add. Bodhisattva Miao's beautiful eyes flashed slightly, and she said calmly, no need, it's just a little backlash, it's still within my tolerance. Although her tone was calm, it was not difficult to see her true thoughts at the moment from her intermittent answers. Muzian couldn't help but smile secretly, and did not bother her to decipher the Buddhist inscriptions anymore. He looked up inadvertently and looked forward. But he found that not far from the ancient tree, a fairy wearing a blue double-breasted dress was standing there looking at him from a distance. Her skirt is layered and covered with a plain gauze. Half of her long hair is loose, while the other half is pulled up in a bun with a jade hairpin inserted in it. A pair of delicate white jade feet peeked out from under the tulle green skirt. They were spotless. Yao Meng. Muzian blurted out almost subconsciously, and then immediately covered his mouth to avoid disturbing the female bodhisattva who was deciphering the Buddhist inscriptions. How did you know I was coming? Looking up at the cold and elegant fairy approaching, Muzian subconsciously asked. I know what happened to you, Yao Meng said with a smile. These words sounded really scary, making Muzian feel as if he was being monitored. Yao Meng stretched his waist lazily, his green dress wrapping her beautiful body. The white neck has a graceful arc, but there is a teasing smile in a pair of glass-like blue eyes. It's just a joke, I won't peep at what you are doing every day. But I guess you will come back soon, so I will stay in the western region and wait for you for now. There was a trace of doubt on Muzian's face, and he thought to himself, you can also deduce the secret of heaven. Yao Meng looked at him with a complicated expression. After you left, Miss Wei told me something dash. Just when Yao Meng was about to repeat what Wei Mengru said before, Miao Bodhisattva slowly opened his eyes. The letter paper sealed with Buddhist inscriptions in her palm was finally untied. Thank you, Bodhisattva. Muzian thanked him sincerely. Miao Bodhisattva said calmly, everything is for the western region. There is no need to thank the donor. After she finished speaking, she found that Yao Meng was looking at her with deep meaning. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows slightly and said, Qing Emperor, do you have something to say? Nothing. Yao Meng inadvertently withdrew his gaze and said with a faint smile, I just found it interesting to hear what Bodhisattva Miao said. There was a bit of playfulness in his tone, as if he had seen through something. The female Bodhisattva glanced at Qingdi indifferently, then withdrew her gaze and ignored him. But his eyes glanced at Muzian inadvertently. Qingdi is a very troublesome woman, which is easy to see from the many contacts she had with Qingdi in the western regions in the past. Being able to successfully gather his physical body in the face of the encirclement and suppression of the western region and southern wilderness when he was so weak at the beginning, this alone is enough to be amazing. As a result, Muzian not only reached the realm of ascension, he even practiced dual cultivation with her, the Bodhisattva of the western regions. Under the eyes of Qing Emperor, should I say that he was too brave, or that Qing Emperor was too indulgent to him? Also, does Qingdi already know something? The female Bodhisattva was thinking about such a thing, while on the other side, Muzian had already opened the letter. This time, there aren't many records on it. Just one short line. However, when he saw that line of words, Musian's body seemed to have countless goosebumps, and he stared at the text, speechless for a long time. What's wrong? What's written on it? Yao Meng saw that his expression was not quite right, so he stepped forward and glanced at the contents of the letter. That person blocked Tianji to prevent me from recalling memories from multiple timelines. Yao Meng's eyes narrowed and she stared at the text. As powerful as the Qing Emperor, when he saw this line of text at this moment, he couldn't help but feel a little amazed in his heart. She suddenly felt that she seemed to have touched a corner of the edge of the world and discovered some truth. It's just that the feeling now is very vague and hazy. Do you know something? Yao Meng asked softly when Musian didn't speak. Musian shook his head slightly as if he was lost. It's not that I know, but I can be sure of something now. The inference he drew after talking to Lan Shiwei on the ancient ship was correct. This world has experienced more than one restart, but the Lord of Taboo prefers to act as if he doesn't know about it. Because someone deceived Tianji, the memory of the Forbidden Lord has become worn off over time. And the origin of everything is because of that woman. But what exactly does she want to do? By the way, after you left, Miss Wei remembered something. At this time, Yao Meng suddenly said, she said that her bad luck was not offset by the great luck, but transferred to another person. Yao Meng's words interrupted Musian's original thoughts, and he stared blankly at Yao Meng's beautiful face. Her words were like a beam of light cutting through the darkness. In Musian's mind, some of the clues he had obtained in the past seemed to be connected together at this moment. Why can concubine Shangyan use the spiritual consciousness of the original witch, and why do the taboo lords mistake the original witch and concubine Shangyan for the same person? And, the meaning of Wei Mengru's existence. Musian suddenly looked up in the direction of the Liangyi sect and murmured to himself, I seem to know the identity of the sect leader. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 637. Liangyi Sect. Wearing black clothes, the graceful woman with an appearance as beautiful as the snow held an oil paper umbrella and walked alone in the snow-covered Liangyi Sect. The cold wind blew by, causing black hair to fly like a waterfall, and the woman's figure was vividly outlined. Only a slender figure was left behind. The bronze-colored building is covered with heavy snow and wrapped in silver. In winter, the disciples of the sect rarely go out, and most of them practice in seclusion within the sect. The few disciples who happened to pass by did not recognize this young and mature woman as the sect leader. Even within Liangyi sect, there are very few people who have seen concubine Shangyan. Even if I have seen her before, I can't remember her face, as if she never belonged to this world. I remember when I first arrived here, monsters were dancing wildly. Creatures from the Forbidden Land, demon cultivators from the demon world, and evil gods from the southern wilderness could be seen everywhere. I really didn't expect that after that, you established the Liangyi sect here, broke the taboos, and planned to send away the first-generation demon emperor. In the end, even the three pillar gods of the southern wilderness, who were so powerful at the time, died. At this time, a cold voice sounded, and not far from concubine Shangyan, a woman in a light blue dress appeared quietly under the heavy snow. Blue Sephora Japonica. Concubine Shangyan looked up at the snowy sky with a faint smile. The person who sent away the first-generation demon emperor was the Qing emperor. She suppressed the first-generation demon emperor at the cost of her own body. You can probably imagine the prosperous scene when all the people of Dongzhou celebrated together. Never seen it? The three pillar gods did not die in my hands, I just witnessed their death. Lan Shiwei sighed again. At this point, the monks associated with the heavenly Dao have nothing but forbidden places. The heavenly Dao is already unprecedentedly weak. Your goal should have been achieved. The purpose of shielding Tianji is to deceive heavenly Dao and pull out all the minions under heavenly Dao one by one without it noticing. There are still 6 of the 9 taboo places that have surrendered to the way of heaven, and there is only one Manjushri Bodhisattva left in the western region who is in harmony with the way of heaven. Looking at the entire Kyushu, it seems that the way of heaven today has lost people's hearts. Seeing that concubine Shangyan did not say a word, Lan Shiwei said with complicated eyes, "Since you have deceived Zhu Tianji for so long, why do you remind me of some forgotten things in the past at this time? Why do you think I'm deliberately reminding you of those forgotten things?" Concubine Shangyan chuckled softly and looked at the falling snow with a faint look. "I deduce the secrets of heaven and observe all the conditions in the world, but I also know that God's will cannot be violated. I just listen to God's will with this mortal body and temporarily take charge of Zhu on its behalf. But ultimately everything must be returned to him." Lan Shiwei's eyes moved slightly, and she said softly, "Is Heaven's Dao really going to revive?" Heavenly Dao has descended several times in the past, but each time it was not the manifestation of his true body, but just a wisp of his avatar. But this time, it seems that because the hidden secret is fading, Tiandao noticed something, so he couldn't hold it back. The heavenly Dao with human nature will express the 7 emotions and 6 desires that only humans have. Naturally, it is impossible for a mortal to take charge of Kyushu on its behalf. Lan Shiwei wanted to say something more, but at this time, concubine Shangyan raised her head and looked in the direction of the temple and whispered, "You and Mu Lian should go back first, I have to meet someone later." Western Region, Nalanda Temple. Muzian stared in the direction of the Lianji sect. At this moment, his eyes became more thoughtful. Regarding the woman Shang Yanfei, there is always a layer of mystery surrounding her. From the past when he was in Tianqian City, when Muzian was secretly arranged as a supporting role to cover up Tiandao's attention, to the subsequent encounter with Qing Emperor and a series of other events, it seemed that there was a pair of hands guiding behind everything. Looking at him. If Sister Mengru's feeling is correct, it means that her bad luck was not actually erased by the great luck of the Chosen One, but that her bad luck was just transferred to another person. I should have thought a long time ago that the backlash of the sect master's luck may not only be due to blocking the secrets of heaven or deducing the secrets of heaven, but maybe every time I give great luck to Sister Mengru, the bad luck is transferred to the sect master. There is a close relationship between the sect master and Wei Mengru. The link between the two is the original witch. Can you send me back to the sect? Muzian quickly gathered his thoughts and looked up at Yao Mendao. That's exactly what I meant. Yao Meng showed a smile, raised his hand and tore a crack in space out of thin air. Let's go, I also want to know to whom Wei Mengru's bad luck was transferred to in the end. She turned to look at the maid in yellow dress not far away, and said with a smile, Miss Wei should also want to go with us, right? Only then did Muzian realize that Wei Mengru had appeared beside them at some point. Today, having merged with the 3 original witch spiritual consciousnesses, she does not look as strong as she did at the beginning, but rather restrained, exuding an inexplicable sense of mystery. Wei Mengru nodded lightly, I'll go back with you. Lianji sect. There was a heavy snowfall in the north of Dongzhou yesterday. When Mu Jian stepped into the sect, he saw the sect covered with snow and the ground paved with bluestone slabs. However, when Muzian and others came to Lianji Peak, they were told that the sect master had left Lianji Peak not long ago. Could it be that he knew we were coming, so he was avoiding us? Muzian muttered inwardly. No matter what, since the master is not here, we can only return to Tianhe Garden for the time being and wait for the master to return. Do you also think that my bad luck has been transferred to the master? When stepping into the gate of Tianhe Garden, Wei Mengru suddenly walked to Muzian and asked softly. It's not a feeling, but it's basically certain. Muzian turned his head to look at the cold and beautiful maid in front of him, and said softly, the master was able to suppress the Forbidden Land with the help of the original witch's consciousness, which means that there must be some connection between her and the original witch. The master transferred Wei Mengru's bad luck to himself, and also completely handed over the original witch's consciousness to Wei Mengru. Isn't this paving the way for him and Wei Mengru? The master paved the way for him. It can be said that they may have known each other before. But why would she help Wei Mengru, even at the cost of sacrificing herself? Musian had some vague guesses, but he was not sure yet. He needed to see Shang Yanfei first. Soon after returning to Tianhe Garden, Musian looked at the vast expanse of white in front of the study, and then his mind moved slightly, as if he had thought of something, and took out several letters from his ring. These were the letters he left behind when he was working in two threads before, some of which were written to his senior sister, and some were written to Shang Yanfei. He looked at the last letter written to Shang Yanfei, and suddenly his mind moved slightly, and he put all the letters back into the ring, and then he left Tianhe Garden with an umbrella. Unknowingly, Musian came to the pilgrimage hall. It was winter, and the entire pilgrimage hall was covered with heavy snow, and even the peach blossoms that bloomed all year round were dyed white by the heavy snow. He walked along a path in the pilgrimage hall and came to a peach forest. In the depths of the peach forest, a woman in black gorgeous clothes could be seen. She was holding a black oil paper umbrella, her skin was whiter than snow, and her back was extremely graceful. She doesn't look like a young girl, but she's not a beautiful woman either. She's a mature woman in between. Time has left no trace on her. Instead, she has a mysterious temperament. Compared with a pure and innocent girl, she has a more mature charm. Shang Yanfei looked up at the peach forest covered with snow, and her voice was cold, crisp, and pleasant. It seems that you and I are really in tune with each other. We actually thought of coming to the same place to relax. After returning to Tianhe Garden, I suddenly remembered that when I first entered the sect, I seemed to have an agreement with the sect master to appreciate flowers together, so I suddenly wanted to come and see. Musian walked to her side and said. Shang Yanfei was stunned for a moment, then she couldn't help but glance at the boy and chuckled, "You still remember it? I thought you raised so many fish at the beginning, just perfunctorily." Even if he was thick-skinned, Musian couldn't hold it when he was suddenly exposed that he wanted to raise the great white shark of the sect master. He coughed lightly and said, "I was too young and ignorant at the beginning, but I am sincere to Yutang, I am sincere to every girl." He paused and stared at the master's stunning face. Today, she was like a plum blossom blooming in the snow, revealing awe-inspiring beauty. "I am sincere to you too," Musian said. Shang Yanfei smiled, then rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Don't move, accompany me to watch the snow scene for a while." After saying that, she closed her eyes slightly, and her long and curled eyelashes trembled gently in the cold wind. "It's a good thing that I am a Taoist monk who can keep warm, otherwise I would freeze to death if I were to appreciate the scenery in such cold weather. But then again, the master is not quite right today. Why does he feel a little bit like a spoiled child?" Musian secretly complained in his heart. He was used to the master who always had everything in his hands, but at this moment, the woman's spoiled childishness really made Musian a little overwhelmed. He tilted his head slightly to look at the woman beside him, and he suddenly realized that he seemed to have never really looked at this woman. In the past, every time he met the sect master, he basically had important matters to discuss, and no matter how he looked at her, he would eventually forget her appearance, so gradually Musian subconsciously ignored her appearance. But now looking at this face carefully, he felt inexplicably familiar. It seems that he has seen it somewhere. Musian looked at this beautiful face, listened to the sound of wind and snow outside the umbrella, and was a little absent-minded for a while. After a long time, in his mind, the sleeping immortal he had seen in the depths of the heavens seemed to gradually overlap with Shang Yanfei. Musian suddenly woke up. What's going on? Am I seeing the all-living things or the true appearance of the sect master? Musian was a little confused for a while. Everyone who sees Shang Yanfei will see the one they like best in their hearts. Musian didn't know whether the immortal he saw was the sect master himself, or whether it was also one of the all living things. At this time, concubine Shangyan hooked her hands around his neck and said softly, "The weather is bad, my shoes and socks are soaked, let's go to another place to continue enjoying the snow." In the center of the pilgrimage hall, there is an aerial attic suspended in the air. The attic has only one floor, and looking out from the attic, you can overlook the appearance of half of the sect. In a side hall of the attic, concubine Shangyan sat on a soft mat, leaning her soft body in Musian's arms, her black gorgeous clothes wrapped around her body in a slightly messy manner, vaguely revealing her snow-white and attractive shoulders. The black skirt was layered and complicated, and the white socks wet by the snow wrapped around the jade feet, and the long hair like a waterfall was naturally scattered. After Musian took off the white socks wet by the snow water on Shang Yanfei's feet, he held the wine glass in one hand and put his arm around her shoulders with the other. Her face was slightly flushed, and it was unknown whether it was because of drunkenness or because she was leaning on her lover's arms. Musian quietly looked at the gloomy sky and the heavy snow falling from the sky with the cold wind. After a moment, he suddenly asked, "Master, have you heard about the luck test I conducted in Tianqian City?" Shang Yanfei took the wine glass from his hand, took a sip, and said faintly, "Mu Lian said that your luck is very special, and it is said to be pink." Musian nodded gently, "Everyone's luck will have different reactions on the test stone tablet. I heard that luck is an indispensable part of entering the Hedeo realm. Every powerful person in the Hedeo realm is a person with great luck. Master, do you want to try it too?" Shang Yanfei looked normal, just playing with the wine glass in her hand. "Did your maid tell you?" Musian did not answer, but summoned his own heavenly energy from his body. The soft white light enveloped the entire side hall, and then, the heavenly energy was like a loyal dog close to its master, constantly floating around Shang Yanfei. This heavenly qi was kept by the master of Ji Yuan in Ling'er. It will only be close to the master who refined it. But it is close to you, but also very close to my maid. Musian looked at the cold light golden eyes of the sect master and the faint smile on her face, and continued, "Logically, the people who have refined these three heavenly qis should be only me and the master of Ji Yuan, but it is so close to you and Sister Mengru at the same time. I was a little strange at first, but now I know. Because my maid is the original witch, but you are also the original witch." Shang Yanfei raised a soft arc at her lips. "The original witch has only 3 spiritual consciousnesses, and now they are all in the body of your maid." Musian stared into the woman's eyes. "There is indeed only one original witch. Just like there is only one original mother goddess. I have seen her in the room deep in the heaven," Musian said again. For a moment, Musian saw for the first time that Shang Yanfei's eyes had changed. Her eyes slowly widened, and she seemed a little surprised. But soon, the surprise turned into relief and relief. In the end, her eyes gradually softened, and she reached out and gently stroked Musian's face. "You guessed right, I am a fairy," she said in a gentle and soft voice that seemed to embrace everything, from the distant future, a fairy who crossed the long river of history and went upstream. "I feel dizzy from writing this. I will try to finish it early tomorrow. Good night, good night."